the trap most athletes fall into is they just share their media day photos, they share their game photos. All of a sudden, everyone wants to talk about why Tiger Woods is leaving Nike.
What do you think he's going to do?
It's okay to piss off a bunch of people. In fact, you probably should be. Like, if you're not sharp enough with your brand, if you're not upsetting some people, a large percentage of people should be like, I don't get it. And that's like exactly when you know that you have a good audience who does get it. Your personal brand sits between how you view yourself and how the world views you. Most people will focus on the external and go, okay, what do I need to be posting on TikTok? We need to figure out who you are, what makes you tick. What are you passionate about? And once we start to figure that out, then we can utilize these external tools to take you there.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. My guest today is Jordan Rogers, and we are talking all things NIL, which is name, image, and likeness. Jordan comes from a 15-year career marketing at Nike, and then decided, you know what, I want to go off on my own. There's this new space in college athletics. I'm interested. I have something I can contribute. I can help the athletes. And so I got to learn a ton about name, image, and likeness. Because when I went to college on a scholarship for volleyball, I ended up paying to play after my second season. So what happened is, in order for me to pay my other bills, not just, school, board, and books, which was great, and the only reason I could personally go to college, I had the opportunity to work in fashion. But you're not allowed, only during legal holidays, to work and make money when you are on scholarship. So I'd work in the summer, or I could work on Thanksgiving Day, things like that. Well, after my sophomore season, I gave up my scholarship and paid to play for my last 2 years. Well, now athletes coming out of high school can get money not only to attend the university, so you get a scholarship, and separate, coming from a nonprofit, it's very kind of nuanced and technical. They'll pay the athlete to come to the university. And then on top of that, they can do separate deals for name, image, and likeness. So now athletes not only have huge upside opportunities, but also so many more things to navigate. And Jordan really helps kind of lay out the land, and not only what people should be looking out for, but how do I best market myself? How do I best brand myself? Because that's not just unique to athletes. I think in this day and age with social media, all of us are actually having to kind of brand ourselves and figure out how to be a brand. And he also shares, like, what are the questions to ask yourself? So as an athlete, where you should go, and what are the sort of top 8, 10 questions you ask to navigate those questions, but also figure out who you are and how to brand yourself. I think as a parent, so if you have a high school athlete or someone in college already, this can be an incredibly helpful conversation. So I hope you enjoy this podcast with Jordan Rogers. Jordan Rogers, welcome to my home. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. There's no place better than getting off an airplane and coming out here. It's incredible.
It is. It's, well, just to be in nature. The last time I saw you, we were in a football stadium in Tallahassee.
Yep.
And just
before everything fell apart for your dear, dear alma mater.
Yeah, I wonder, is it because their schedule wasn't as hard as everybody else's that they didn't get that play, the fact that they were undefeated? What do you think that was?
There's a simple answer and a hard answer. The simple answer is their quarterback got injured a week or two after we saw him. So we saw him when they were playing Miami, and they were just world beaters. They looked amazing, and they were a hands down favorite for the Final Four. And then their quarterback, who was a Heisman candidate, Jordan Travis, went down, and they really struggled. Like most teams will struggle when your star quarterback goes down.
Right.
And they struggled for a couple of weeks. We can't disconnect the fact that college football is now a real entertainment product. And so ESPN pays $500 million per year to broadcast the Final Four.
Yeah.
And they had a really bad scenario last year where Georgia destroyed TCU 63-3 or something. And they were not going to let that happen again. So they justified keeping Florida State out by basically looking at the 2 weeks without Jordan Travis and saying this team will get slaughtered by Georgia or Texas or Alabama. And, they probably would have, but that goes against like the competitor nature of so many people who are like, give us a chance.
Yeah. And I think in a way you're just talking about the business of sport.
Yes.
And that's why I am really excited to talk to you about this, because so when I played volleyball at Florida State, I went on a scholarship. I am a direct line result of Title IX.
Okay.
I was born in 1970 when Title IX was passed.
Wow.
I went to college in 1987. So an entire generation, I went to school on a scholarship.
Wow.
But because I was sort of flying solo after my freshman year during summer, so legal holidays,
Okay.
during a competitive or college schedule. So legal holiday would be Thanksgiving Day,
Yes.
Christmas Day, or summer. I started working in New York and modeling because I was going to pay my bills,
Yeah.
my other bills.
Yeah.
And so my sophomore year, when I went back to school, I went to school, I competed, we went to the NCAA tournaments. Other coaches were like, how is she working, making money? So after my sophomore year, I paid to play.
No way.
Yeah.
Did you pay with your modeling
Yeah.
fund?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you're making enough that
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so what's interesting is my coach, Cecile Renaud, who you met, she helped me navigate the next 2.5 years of I got out of spring training. I would live in New York. I would go to summer school, jam up on credits, be eligible to play. And our deal was when I'm there from August to December for my season, you don't take any jobs.
Yep.
I would give up jobs at 19 years old or 18 years old, $30,000 for an ad campaign or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was so that because then it was supposed to be amateur sports.
Yes.
You're not on scholarship. You're not allowed to make money this way. Because also right before me, it was like Florida State's a big football school, obviously. They'd be like, oh, son, I went when Dion went. Can you go, you can water the lawn and here's $7,000, so they were finding ways.
Always.
So they kept tightening it up.
Yep.
Right. So I paid to play. I know. Isn't that funny?
What a fascinating, that's amazing. Okay.
So fast forward to where are we at? 2 years for name, image, and likeness?
Well, coming up on 3, but we're very in the early days. Yes.
Right. So for people who don't know, now not only do you have college students who can be compensated for the use or they can promote products on their instance in social media and be used by companies in promotion.
Yes.
And be paid, but also, and this part confuses me, how the universities can also we'll give you a
Universities
scholarship.
Keep going.
No, so they can give you a scholarship, but somehow there's these nonprofits or these other things.
NIL collectives.
Yes, that can pay or pay an athlete to be like, before you even make an NIL deal, on top of your scholarship, you will receive X funds.
Absolutely. Well, yes.
I would have killed it if I was 18
Gabby,
now.
you
but
would
maybe
be.
Not, but
look,
maybe
they're
not.
not funding a lot of women's sports, but they would have loved to.
Just kidding.
They would have loved to have you. You would have crushed it in NIL, and you could have made. You could have been. You eventually went on to sign with Nike.
I did,
but you could have signed with Nike outside of that.
I know,
and you probably would have been a priority, and so.
So for people who don't know, we have this now. And I have to say, going to school with a huge group of athletes, like I said, I had to work to take care of myself.
Yep.
So you saw athletes that got there, but in a way, I always say to people, if you had to do your laundry or go to the movies, you didn't, unless your parents were sending you money. A lot of athletes, it's tough, and it is a full-time job.
Yes.
People do not realize the amount of work and pressure and everything that it takes to be, especially at these high-level schools.
Oh my gosh.
A college athlete.
People have no idea. And I mean, you could tell it better than I can, but I've just worked really closely with a lot of them. I mean, they're jammed 16 hours a day. Mm-hmm. I want people to note, it should be noted that this is largely a conversation around men's football and men's basketball primarily. Now, when we're talking about name, image, and likeness as it's intended, the women are actually crushing.
Sure.
Because they're much better at social media. They're more willing to be vulnerable. They're not banking their future on a pro contract, regardless of what the likelihood of that is or not. And so there's a lot of factors that are fueling the young women from doing really well. But, for people who don't know, name, image, and likeness, I think a lot of people don't understand what a watershed moment this is because it seems like it should just be normal. You shouldn't have had to jump through all those hoops to go make money off of your image, likeness, your name back then. But we have this, I would call it the sham of amateurism. I mean, amateurism, it's a hard thing to talk about with a lot of people. Again, I'm going to be talking about basically what I would argue are professional sports that have been masquerading as college sports for a long time. And the game we were at is a prime example of that. It's a giant stadium on a Saturday. It's sold out. There were Coca-Cola. We were in a suite with very fancy people who were flying through, and Coca-Cola is paying millions of dollars to potentially sponsor that stadium, that school, have partnerships, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't blame anyone for that. There are well-compensated executives, coaches, all kinds of people making money, except for the ones that we were most interested in and the ones that we all showed up for, which were the players on the field.
Right.
A couple of years ago, the NCAA got taken to task. They've been taken to court quite a lot, especially recently. And they've taken before and they've defeated, but it started to, the blocks have started to crumble. There were a couple of things. There was one in California that Governor Newsom passed, which basically made it a state law. And then everybody else had to like trickle. The Supreme Court also struck down one, I believe it's the Alston case. They voted 9-0 that the NCAA was basically running a cartel they're an antitrust violation, which is what they're petitioning the Congress for right now, is to give them an antitrust exemption, which basically just saying...
Well, the cat's out of the bag, though.
Yes,
I mean, I think it's done. So if thinking of name, image, and likeness, and what people have to understand is, and I don't know if the statistic's slightly higher in football, 1% of athletes in college will play professional sports. Yeah. And if you're a female athlete, unless you're a tennis player, and most tennis players that are going to make a real living don't go to college.
Don't go to college, right.
So typically those jobs actually, for example, LSU women's basketball players are making more than the WNBA players.
Yes.
Which is...
wild.
Yes. So, but typically this could be for most athletes a time to make some money.
Yes.
And then for the, maybe the 1 or 2%, it's a nice bump before they go to the big game.
Yes. Or it's a good opportunity for them to earn something while they can matriculate and mature before making the jump into the pros. So you're seeing a lot of basketball players who LSU women's team is a great example, won a national championship last year. Angel Reece, Flage, Haley Van Lith has joined them now from Louisville. But all of them probably could have gone to the league. They have a bigger opportunity that they can earn while at LSU. Now, your ability to earn off your name, image, and likeness does not change when you go to the WNBA. But while you're in Baton Rouge, they have a massive fan base who is rabid, and they have Kim Mulkey as their coach. And so, in case we just haven't defined, for some people, you can earn money off of promoting things and off of recognizability. The distinction that we're making here, and where it gets really tripped up, and what you were mentioning with the schools, is they're still not allowed to be paid to play. So they can be paid for their image and likeness, but they can't be paid to play. Now, collectives, I just love... First of all, I'm an entrepreneur in the last 18 months. And so I got to tell you, when I filed for an LLC and, all this, I became really patriotic. I'm very grateful to live in America. I'm grateful for the free market. It's an interesting experience for me. So I actually love I also appreciate creativity. And the free market will get creative and to me, again, this is yet another reinforcement of where the demand is. So this demand has been there forever. Like you said, you were at FSU with players like Dion. They were getting paid. It's been happening for years and years and years. They've been getting paid. Now we just have a legal loophole, essentially.
Right.
So what they do is they create, and all of them are different. There are many collectives who are doing great things. They are serving players. They are doing nonprofit work. They are helping players build their brands. So we just need to say that. But generally speaking, they are set up in order to be the salary cap manager of a primarily men's football and or men's basketball team, and sometimes women's basketball as well. Generally not for the other female sports yet.
Yeah, well, they've got some women in gymnastics.
Yep. Probably.
And basketball that have done well, obviously. But
yes. Well, but I would actually... Some of them are probably being paid by the collective. Most of them, like your Liddy Dunns of the world, they're being paid through NIL.
Got it.
So it's
that's
like
interesting.
Yeah.
Are there people making from the collective and not making from NIL? Just out of curiosity.
Absolutely.
Really?
Most football players, I would tell you, and again, for your Power 5 top 30 programs, for your Power 5 men's basketball top 20 programs, they're absolutely making a vast majority of the money through the NIL collective. So I'll give you an example. A quarterback's probably not the best example, but Yeah.
Because quarterbacks are making
a lot of money. So from their collective, like the going rate right now in the transfer portal, that's the other thing is there's this transfer portal in American football that it basically now allows for free agency every year. So if we have perpetual free agency, so you can imagine like when LeBron James becomes a free agent, everybody starts tracking planes and doing all this stuff. Now that happens every year in college football. So it's constant, soliciting and recruiting, and you not only have to recruit players, and it used to be the old model is like you recruit a player, you keep them for 4 or 5 years, and then they go on to the pros or they graduate and they go to work a real job. Now, sorry, not a real job, but you know what I mean? In the workforce.
But if you transferred in my day, you had to sit.
Yeah, you were done. You had to sit for one, and it was like you better be sure.
Yeah. So people don't realize this portal is also a big deal because it creates a lot of movement. So just from a technical point, I'm wondering what you think about from sport performance, because I was talking earlier to the boys about people. First of all, football and basketball, especially football, this is a complicated sport, and every coach and offense and defense has their systems. And then you're switching and moving, and then all of a sudden you're going to learn a new system. It's a new thing. Chemistry is a real thing. So I'm curious if you think it's going to make the game more competitive and better and faster, or is it going to impact the level and also the fan base? Because the big thing about college sports, the power of college sports is that's my team.
Yes. And has been for 30 years, right? You've been probably going to Florida State games now for 30 years or whatever. But
when I can get there.
Sorry. Yeah. Exactly.
But do you think that's going to up the game, the level of the game, or is it a distraction? Like, I'm just curious on your instinct.
I think both. First is everybody, you hear all the crowd that's like, NIL is killing college sports. No. College sports is bigger and better than ever. They broke every ratings record this last year. I would actually argue. So one of my big complaints about college football particularly was when the season starts, there's really only 4 to 5 teams who can actually win. I think in the last 12 years, there's 5 programs who've won. Alabama, Georgia, Florida State had 1 year with Jameis. Clemson has won a couple times. And we just had Michigan. But like these are your powerhouse blue blood. And everybody's like, oh, it makes the haves have and the have-nots have not. Well, guess what? It's always been that way.
It has.
I guess when they were recruiting you to Florida State, I bet you there were smaller programs who recruited you. They didn't have a chance. No. When you go see all the facilities that Florida State has, or
it's
whoever,
sexy.
Texas, whatever.
It's a sexy thing. So
totally. So that was the old way of like amassing firepower. Now they're just amassing dollars to be able to put in the player's pocket. So I do want to answer your question earlier. The men's football and men's basketball player, most of them are making a way majority of their money through the collective, basically getting a salary to play. But they are not allowed to be paid to play. So the contracts are set up to, we are going to promote you. So we're going to set up this sort of shell company. It's called a collective. Then we're going to pay you to promote this company. We put money in your pocket. You are not allowed to earn, but you have to do something for that money. So back then they would water grass and get paid $7,000, or they would wash a car or greet people at the local car dealership, and then suddenly get a car for really cheap, or get paid a lot for that summer internship that they didn't really have to show up for. Now we can just be on the front of, like, they can show up to an ice cream social. They post some terribly invaluable social media posts. They can go to a luncheon. They can show up to a dinner party. They can go to a booster's birthday party and get paid, I don't know, $250,000 for the year. They have to do something kind of once a month, but it's generally check off the box stuff so that they can pay them to play. Because the real issue in all of this college sports is that the value that these players bring is to the university, number one, who still is skirting they're not paying, they're not through the collective, they're not paying out of their own pocket for these players to come. The television networks, who are making a ton of money and paying a ton of money, they're not sharing in any of the revenue generation with the players either. And so,
well, you also know about scholarships. I didn't know this. When I went back to Florida State to help raise money for the women's program, every year they have to start over or do a 3-year program where they are raising money for scholarships. The university does not contribute to that. And I think that's another thing. I didn't know that. I thought it was sort of like, and from that pie of like TV revenues, then we put that towards scholarships. They don't.
Right.
They fundraise for the scholarships.
Yep.
So do they take their taxes out? This is what I'm so obsessed with the tax part. I don't, because I can just see at the end of this going like, hey son, good job. But guess what? Now you're in the hole for $200,000. Do we know in this collective, how does that work? Even from a technical point?
You would like to think that most of these collectives are hand-holding these athletes. A lot of the universities, to their credit, which is, probably hurt my business a little bit. My business, I set out to basically do keynote speaking. I'm in basically player development. So I said, hey, I see a lot of players who have a lot of people around them from the time they started, like 13-year-old. And everyone has a dog in the hunt of something. So either, every coach who comes to recruit them wants them to come to their school, regardless of whether it's the best for the athlete. Their agent wants something, needs to get the highest dollar amount for some marketing contract, regardless of whether it's the right thing or not for their brand and their long-term health, because the agent's incentivized by sheer dollar amount. So that always seemed
Is a high school athlete allowed to have an agent?
In 36 so there's two agents, marketing agent and then a contract agent. Okay. So they're not allowed to have a contract agent until they declare that they're pro. But right now, the marketing agent is basically the one who's able to get them NIL deals and all that. So,
but a sophomore in high school could have a marketing agent?
In 36 states right now.
Okay, and if the collective pays the kid their freshman, sophomore year, does anyone get a cut of that?
If they have an agent negotiating for them, potentially they would get a percentage of that deal in helping them negotiate it. And everybody's still trying to figure out where is this. So that's technically the collective is an endorsement contract. And the industry standard percentage that you would take on that is 20%. But we kind of know it's a contract. It's a contract for playing, which that industry standard, particularly in football and basketball, is like 1 to 3%. Right. So you would like to think your marketing agents are finding that middle ground because it is still an endorsement contract. And so I do see real value for families having someone who knows what they're doing to go, hey, hold on. We're not going to do, whatever, or we're not signing over their likeness into perpetuity. There's all kinds of weird things that people try to do. Yeah.
So talk about that for a second, because people, I always joke when, I've been doing this a long time.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll even go and Laird's doing an interview and they'll have a release. And I'm like, send the release before. I don't want to get there because I'll show up with a Sharpie and just black everything out. And I go, is there words like known and unknown or in perpetuity in this? Otherwise, just rewrite it. So for people listening, sometimes they will slip these things in a word salad and say, in perpetuity, and for companies known and unknown, which means we can use this now for what we're talking about, and maybe in the future with something we don't know. And that's very, very common, even in professional levels of sport and other. But the thing I'm curious about is, let's say you have a talented quarterback. He gets paid a ton of money. After sophomore year, the coach gets fired. He's like, I don't want to be here. He came with me, and I'm going to go in the portal. I'm going to go. Now, what if he has a signed deal? What happens with his responsibilities or commitment to
the collective?
Yeah. Or what if does every name, image, and likeness relationship end every year? Like, how do those work?
Yeah, most of them are doing like 1-year deals right now. Given the nature of the business. But theoretically, they're not allowed, and this is where everybody gets confused, because like if we're just speaking in plain English, they're being paid to play football there at that school, very specifically. But they're not allowed to put that in the contract. And so they have to get creative by saying, you need to live in a zip code within, 20 miles from here or something. Or all of the endorsement agreements and the things that they've agreed to carry out, they would basically just have to go back to that geographical location and carry it out. Now, I think both the collective and the athlete I mean, the athlete needs to be able to live up to that and be prepared to basically call their bluff and be like, okay, I'll show up to do an autograph signing, but are you going to do it for a fan base that's like,
yeah, you left and played
pissed
for
now, that doesn't want you there? Like, is that
Yeah.
going to be good for the collective? And so ideally, you would like to think that they could negotiate a buy. I mean, theoretically, they're 1-year deals.
So if you were making a suggestion, because also I'd like to simultaneously kind of build in your suggestions from what you've seen, because this is so new. If it was you, it's like, hey, keep everything to a year. Even, it's so funny because I'm being on the other side, right? Like on my renewals with Nike, it's like you never wanted a 5-year deal. You wanted 3 because you understood the company needs more than 2 because they've invested in you.
Yep.
But you want to have wiggle room because if you start growing and expanding and getting better, then you want to be able to renew sooner than 5 years.
Yep.
So you always are living between these conversations.
Yep.
But this is a year if you're dealing with college.
Yes.
Are we calling college pro now or amateur?
Well, it's college. Yeah, let's call it college.
Let's just call it college. Okay.
Yeah.
So you'd say, okay, 1 year coming in. Now, what if you have high school kid? He's a senior.
Right.
The collective, I get that. They can pay him because he's going there.
Sure.
But when they get approached, maybe they know, hey, this kid is going to actually play. They're not even going to redshirt. Do you have a suggestion about how a family would navigate helping a kid figure out how to deal with all this?
Yeah. First of all, I'm super sympathetic. I mean, it's why I'm in this business. It's why, like, working for Nike for 15 total years, over 10 years in brand marketing. I worked really closely with a lot of high profile. I worked from every level. So I started in like grassroots American football in Texas. And I'm sorry that I always say American football. At Nike, we had global football, which was soccer, and then American football. So to anybody that sounds weird, I apologize. And I saw like these 9th graders. I mean, there were whole companies like Nike, Under Armour, Adidas just competing to try to get to these kids. They wanted the best athletes wearing their stuff. They wanted all this stuff. So I was a part of this. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. Again, like Gatorade wanting to be, or any school wanting these athletes. But I saw 15-year-old kids with single moms working 2 jobs and trying to raise their siblings. And you have like all of these people flying in from all over. They literally have trunks of letters, and all these brands are coming after them, and all these little like street agents and everything. And it was like, it's really overwhelming. In my own very, very not comparable, but like I create on Instagram, and like my Instagram's been going crazy over the last couple of months, and I'm getting a lot of opportunity coming my way. And it's a lot. I'm a grown man. I'm over 40. I'm like, and I'm literally,
I'm like, nice to be wanted.
It does. And I know how fleeting it is. So I'm trying not to take it for granted, and I'm trying to be gracious about some of these things. And I've spent a lot of time in prayer. I've been thinking about this weekend, asking my friends like, hey, I need help like discerning some of this stuff, because I'm getting a lot of opportunity. And so I can only imagine me 25 years ago. And so my advice to them, first of all, if you're in football or basketball, you need to base it on more things than just the cash, but the money needs to talk. I mean, you are a valuable commodity. And I don't know if that's a Freudian slip, but you are, a commodity to that university and that college. And if they want you bad enough, they will pay up. And so they're not allowed to say, we're going to pay you this. They speak in very general terms. They'll say, for a quarterback of your ranking, if you were to commit to us, you could expect to earn something like $1.2 million. And let me introduce you to Ray, who runs our collective.
Is that for 1 year?
Yes.
So
that would be like your transfer quarterback.
Yeah, sure. No, I get it.
But a 5-star, they're going to be there soon.
300,000.
So Jordan Travis, let's go back to Florida State. Jordan Travis.
Whoa, yeah. Didn't he get hurt too?
He got hurt.
Yeah.
So the hit,
1.2 million or something.
He probably got, I don't know what he was getting paid. Probably about $1 million.
Yeah. The last 15 seconds of that game or something.
It's brutal. But look at the hit that Florida State took. So I did some math on a video I did. Florida State, if they had made it to the CFP, they would get X number millions of dollars. The amount of fan licensed gear, the amount of people traveling to bowl games, the amount of money they get from ESPN, the amount of money they get from the CFP. Are you telling me Jordan Travis is not worth $1 million multiple on that?
Yeah.
And people, you could argue the same thing. Like Patrick Mahomes is worth, there's a salary cap in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes probably makes $60 million now, maybe 50, whatever it is. He makes probably more than that for the Kansas City Chiefs. But like that's somewhere in the ballpark that he's like, the team is collectively bargained and all that. They don't have that in college. So,
so it's the money.
Yeah, I would foremost. Like, they need to be paying up.
Okay, I'm gonna be really old fashioned here for a second. Yeah. As an athlete, so part of the reason that my life has gone on the trajectory it has is I went to Florida State and I played for a person that helped me develop as a human being. Amen. And that's for real. And I know it's really cheesy, and women's sports is significantly different than men's. So I'm gonna say that right off the bat.
Sure. Are we gonna get canceled if we say that now?
I don't care. I'm happy to listen. Did you see USA Boxing just? Yeah. Okay. Oh, no, yeah. It's fine. I'm fine with that.
Women's and men's sports are different, particularly in college. Yeah.
It just is. It is what it is. Yeah. I'm a realist.
Yes.
So anyway, I wanted to be on a good team.
Yes.
I wanted to win.
Yes.
And of course, all of this is about winning.
Totally.
So obviously what you're talking about is programs that are trying to win. So that's probably understood.
Yes.
But for development,
yes,
not only as a person, but some of these athletes could be significantly better
yep,
or worse based on the program that they go to.
Totally.
Period. Like you could go to a program that helps you realize your potential, or a program that kills you. You hate the game, you hate the coach, you don't play well in their,
absolutely,
the way that they play, and, or they switch your positions or whatever they do. So all I'm saying is if you have these kids making these decisions, okay, the money should talk, but do you think it's still valuable to go, where do you want to live?
Absolutely.
What kind of person do you want to coach? Do you want a hard-nosed coach? Do you want to, do you think this is still important?
Absolutely. And I stopped there because that's the big topic, but all of the traditional decisions that you would make then also should come into play. Mm-hmm. And so again, to the Jordan Travis, we could extend that argument though and go, okay, Jordan Travis, let's say he made $1 million and he could earn Florida State and he was on that world stage. Had he gone to, I don't know, let's call it Louisville, and maybe they paid him $1.5 million, but they lost 5 games because he had no offensive line. They didn't make it to the bowl game, so no one knows who Jordan Travis's name is. We know that name because he was so good. He played for Mike Norvell, who's a great coach, who's a leader of men and brought them up and all this great stuff. And so all of those things need to be factored, because you could make $2 million and be done next year. Or you could make $500 over the course of 4 years, go on to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. And these are all very hard decisions. Like you just said, you were factoring 3 years versus 5 years and all that. And some people, I think, try to infantilize these young men and women and be like, oh, they shouldn't have to make decisions like that. Well, this is the real world, and we all have to make tough decisions sometime. And there's no other industry in the world, or particularly in the United States of America, first of all, that we restrict people from making these tough decisions. Mm-hmm. So when Billie Eilish can make a great album, nobody goes, oh, she's 16. Nope, she can't be able to earn anything off her voice. Yeah. It's ridiculous. That's so stupid.
Well, and they don't realize too, your chances of injury, there's all kinds of things that play into whether you can make money. Now, let's say you have a 20-year-old running back and they're good in Division I. Like they're producing numbers, they're successful, they're on a bowl game, on a bowl team, whatever. Yeah. They're just not quite fast or big enough to play in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Pretty common.
Yeah, very common.
So you got a kid who he's making $500 a year in college.
Yes. Game
over though. He's not really he just doesn't, that's a whole other jump. When you're talking about going into the pros, especially of the NBA or the NFL, these are different genetic,
very different,
and mental people.
Yes.
The level. What about them? Because that's the majority. Totally. It's not that I worry. It's like, I'm not everybody's mother, but it's like, was this better for their life that they got this money? Mm-hmm. Because are they saving it? Are they spending it and getting a car and getting some jewelry and giving it to their cousin and buying their mom a house? Your maximum earning time of your life is when you're 20, 21 years old. And now you're supposed to go out into the real world. Yeah. And I was talking to a friend of mine who also was a professional female athlete. And she's like, but they should give them a business, they should take a business class and they should teach them. I go, should.
Yeah.
Most of them are coming from single family homes trying to pull it. I'm wondering from your point of view in the long run, because this is going to be the majority of the athletes,
Yes.
is it going to be better for them, or
Yes.
is it going to be something also very hard to navigate for the rest of their adult life?
Well, I would much rather be that running back who he could stay 5 years. We have players who have stayed 6 years with COVID eligibility. I would much rather a running back be able to make $3 million over 6 years and be able to set himself up for his future, because he's going to leave. He's going to have multiple concussions. He's going to have broken knees. His body's in a car wreck every Saturday. Yeah. So he could either go out into the world with that college athlete schedule where he's not getting a degree, the degree that most people go, oh, they're getting a free education. This is not the same degree that you, with your fraternity, and I'm not you, but this theoretical, the people who are always in my comments and who are like, oh, they get free education. Like, first of all, it's not free. They're working around the clock.
Yeah, they are.
It's not the same degree when you got to pick your major and work with an advisor and take extracurricular activities and do all this stuff. No. I'm talking to athletes who are like, well, I wanted to be in PR, but my sports schedule, and this is men's and women's. I talked with a young female volleyball player who was like, she was in like genetic biology, wanting to be in marketing, but because her volleyball schedule wouldn't allow her to do that, it's not an option.
And I got one for you. I know a volleyball player that is going to have to quit her senior year so she can go to her major. Yeah, she's not going to be able to play because she isn't, and it's a medical. It's something adult, right? And so I would rather them be able to earn money and at least have the option of like learn how to invest money, learn how to build a business, learn how to take and steward that money, because right now they're going to learn that same lesson if they make it to the pros. A lot of them won't, and then they walk out and they've spent the last 5 years basically crushing their body, working for a coach, doing all this stuff. And there are so many good things about college athletics. I do not want to be the one. There's so many. You've outlined them. I meet athletes every day. People I work. Nike is made up of former college athletes who like 100%. Didn't go pro. So college athletics can do so many great things. But in these basically semi-pro leagues that we've created, they need to be compensated for that. And so I think, yes, I would rather them be able to earn that money. Is the school putting anything in place to help at least protect them from getting them into a bad financial situation? So if you get a kid who's getting $500,000, is it here's all the money at once and it's on you to worry about your taxes and good luck, son? Or what are we seeing there?
Yeah. So I actually started to say this earlier. I got sidetracked. So my business is I go and I teach personal branding and player development to college teams. And so that's what I was doing down at Florida State when we met. That I'll be in Georgia next week, working with them across multiple different teams. And so the people who lead NIL, the universities in general, whether it's the NIL department, player development, whatever, are seeing after this. And so I teach personal branding and how to identify your story, how to identify where you want to serve, how you can work with companies potentially, how you understand who you are and what you want out of this experience. Because so many of them are not ever even asking that until it's too late. So that's what I have a real passion for. Sometimes I get moved down the list though, because first they have to bring in like tax professionals. Then they bring in like some finance people to try to coach them up on that. They bring in legal and compliance people to try to teach them, do not sign your likeness and name away into perpetuity. So yes, I think a lot of the universities are trying to do this, and there are even laws I think in place for them to have to get on the books to try to provide this education, whether it's to cover their butts or to help serve their athletes, probably somewhere in between. But yes, people are doing that.
Let's talk about authenticity. So you talk a lot about when you talk about marketing, and we'll get into your background a little bit, which is really helpful and interesting on this, but you talk about authenticity. And as somebody who, again, and I came from kind of building the road as I went. I just followed my gut and thought, oh, that feels good. That doesn't feel good. And just pushed along, and good timing, lucky. Let's not kid ourselves. Sure. I was lucky. and I'm married to somebody who's in a weird sport, and somehow that worked out. And, it was about storytelling and all these things, right? Because you couldn't go and watch it. You couldn't go like on Sunday at 3, the wave's coming and we're all gonna, it's just like, okay, what do you do?
That's true.
So storytelling was very big. I think storytelling's big in alternative sports, as you know, and I think it's very, very big in women's sports. I was having a debate with the boys earlier because they don't know this yet.
They're about to learn.
For whatever reason, look at them.
Yeah.
I believe that with men, it's like, give me the stats. He's my guy. He's number one. With women, who is she?
Yeah.
We're different. And you can say, hey, I don't like that. But even the girls at LSU basketball, part of the reason that they are crushing it, besides being champions and being great basketball players, is it's their story, right? One's an artist, one does this. And for men, it's not quite the same. Right. So you have kind of this whole idea. So when I hear this idea of like being authentic, it's so tricky because to consciously be authentic almost loses authenticity, if that makes sense. So when you talk to your athletes, is it this idea of, hey, just because this guy over here, because it's hard for women if you go on social media, the girl who shows her butt and boobs has a gazillion followers. The girl who's really smart and going, let's save the animals, has 50,000 followers. Sure. So you say, no, let's be authentic, right? And so it's so hard to not get tempted to do the thing that gets you attention.
Absolutely.
But the long-term success, I think, actually comes from what you're saying, which is, who am I?
Yes.
And how do I find that voice? So if I'm an 18-year-old and I've probably spent most of my time doing this sport.
Absolutely.
What are the questions I ask myself to go, wow, how would I?
Right.
How do I want to be perceived? What do I want to represent?
The challenge I give athletes is like, it's really hard. And I even flinch kind of saying it to them is like, can your sport be the least interesting thing about you? And it is like, it hits like a ton of bricks because I watch it right now. I have a 7-year-old son, and you can already see, like when they have athletic, all of us, we have this weird DNA thing, if they show any, talent or whatever, you're like, oh my gosh, the future Messi, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you watch people you watch parents envelop their whole identity in their kids' sports. You watch our whole culture does this. And so I'm sitting in front of, the places who are hiring me are these big universities who can afford it. So these are the best athletes in the world. And if you were playing anything at Florida State, I don't care, whatever, it could be water polo, it could be whatever, you have probably been a baller since you were 12 years old, 10. And my appeal to them is that, hey, the first challenge of branding is to be known for anything. And you can ask yourself, am I known for the things that I want to be known for? Or am I known for other things? Or is it that a neutral? So they're known as an athlete. And everyone around them in their circle is going to talk about them in the forum of an athlete. Yeah. And so it's like ESPN, their university, their coaches, their local hometown newspaper, their school, they're probably in their school's Hall of Fame, or they get invited, their jersey got retired. It's all in the context of being an athlete. And so what I think a lot of athletes mistake is that then they just feed entirely into that. So I would say, yes, I think for men, generally their male consuming audience doesn't care as much about the story, but I would tell them that if they want to live on beyond the court or the field, they better get them to know their story, because when you're no longer producing stats, then what are people going to care about? And those stats are going to go down, and they're eventually going to go away.
Yeah, and they're going to be beaten, or
totally. Yeah. And
you're going to be you used to be that.
Oh yeah, you used
to be that. That's my favorite. I'm like, you used to be that volleyball player. I'm like, I'm actually here, standing in front of you. I'm Gabby. I'm alive.
Totally. Yeah.
I used to get my back up years ago, and then I realized, like, okay, who cares? But it's fine. People. It is really amazing.
Yeah, listen to that.
Weren't you used to be that? And I think it's really important for athletes, because that comes a lot sooner than everybody else. Yes. And so I think this idea of reminding young people, if you're going to do these sports, I understand, because it is a ticket.
Yes.
Out.
Yes.
To wherever. And you might like it and love it, and
Absolutely.
It's fun on top of it.
Totally.
But for a lot of us, it's like, hey, this is kind of a really great way to move forward my life.
Yes.
It really is. And it is hard, but I do like it and it's fun and all these things. But that you're you.
Yeah.
And one of the things you do is this sport.
Yes.
You are not, even Laird, who at almost 60 years old is chasing waves. He's like, I am Laird, and one of the things I do is surf. So I think your point of reminding them to develop, and so it's hard to do though.
Totally.
Because it's like, what are you supposed to, hey, read a book.
Yeah. Well,
it's like, what, how do you encourage them? Is it to honor that sense of who you feel you are?
Yes. It's all, as we say, I one of the things I struggle with media, I create on the internet and all that, is all this stuff is so complicated. And there's never an easy answer. Everybody wants like an easy answer. Mm-hmm. It's tough, and so I teach athletes first, one of the first elements of a successful personal brand is to be distinct, so the way then that we find what our distinction is and how we stand out is then by defining what we're good at, what we're passionate about, what our interests are, what our hobbies are. And so I think you're such a great example of this. You had interest outside of volleyball, but you also then had like your own flavor in volleyball, like whether it was what you were wearing or how you wore things or what, so you add like, we have this big funnel and it's like, how many people play volleyball? And it's like, okay, how many are female who play volleyball? Okay, that's cut in half. How many play volleyball and are over 6 foot tall or whatever? Well, maybe a few less.
Yeah, not many less.
Not many less, but yeah, exactly. And then it's like, how many are also models on the side, like in New York? Well, significantly
Mine
fewer.
was really obvious. I had it easy. Let's not play games. I had to work extra.
Yeah.
My stuff was so obvious. And I was like, I'm playing that card. I'm playing that card. I'm playing that card. And also I knew it was stuff that I like doing the TV and everything else. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, I like that though. So I didn't play the things that were obvious that I didn't like. I played the things that were obvious that also I thought, and I'm genuinely interested.
Yes.
And I think I can do a good job.
Totally.
And that's very different. So just that reminder to try your best, because it's weird. It's like, even when I do something that I'm taking something new on, it's like I take it on from a pure place of knowing, and then I get strategic.
Yes.
I don't strategically try to do something.
Totally.
Take it on because you gravitate towards it, then figure out.
Well, and that's what I'm basically doing. So all I say with athletes, like, I'm just trying to create 1 hour, which within that hour, we're going to have 10, 15 minutes of you to think about what it is that you want and who you are. Because I don't think they have much that time. So like if I've blocked 1 hour in your 16-hour schedule of being pulled all over the place, it's really fascinating. I've worked with a couple of like high profile football players. Even one of them like made his announcement today. And one of the common themes I keep hearing from these, I'm like, why are y'all committing early? Like, to me, there's no upside, and I'm like
what do you mean, like a sophomore?
So, like, yeah, sophomore, junior, committing to their university, and they're being recruited by every university on the sun. Mm-hmm. And me, given the seismic shifts that are happening in football, I'm like, why would you commit?
Oh, they just want
in 2 years, that coach won't.
They want it to be done.
They want it to be done.
Yeah.
And every single person, literally, I spoke with this young man. He said literally from the time he was 14 years old till he was 19, every single conversation he ever had started and stopped with that. Where are you going to go? Oh, well, my uncle, well, I went here. Don't go there. My did this. Where have you decided? What do you do? What's the list? What's it down to? And so I'm just saying all that to say they are pulled by so many other people. So I'm just trying to create that moment. And I think you bring up a great point. So what I'm trying to do is say, hey, stop and think. What is it that lights your heart on fire? What is it that you're really interested in? What is it that you're passionate about? When you're not playing, and it's not a bad thing to say volleyball. You probably genuinely loved volleyball. And Laird loves surfing. Like,
that's a whole other.
I know.
That's that's like a relationship.
Indeed. I'm obsessed with golf. I'm obsessed.
I know you are.
I'm like, and it's actually working. I mean, so if I use a personal example right now, every time I show these athletes, I go, I have this slide and I have me in the middle and I have 10 interests. And I'm like, I love coffee, nutrition, working out, travel, photography, golf, cars, my family, my children, all these things. And I'm like, but for purposes of being strategic and communicating publicly, when I'm on my social media, you'll only hear me talk about 3 things. 1, sports business. That's what I mostly talk about. Second is criminal justice. I'm passionate about it. I'm an advocate. I believe that God put me on this earth. In my role is to at least be a communicator between different populations. For a lot of people who don't understand the criminal justice system, and I, having experienced it up close and personal and escaped it, my role is to communicate that. And so it's not going to get the best engagement. It's never going to go viral, but it's important to me, and it is meaningful, and it aligns to my purpose. And third, I talk about golf. Why? Again, doesn't get good engagement, doesn't get, no one really cares, but I can't not talk about it.
Right.
And now I've given that presentation like 50 times in the last 18 months, literally in the last like 6 weeks, Gabby. For once, sports business plus my obsession with golf over the last 15 years has finally, the stars have aligned and come together. And you want to talk about luck? I'm there too. I'm a product of luck in a lot of ways, but we've put the places now. All of a sudden, everyone wants to talk about why Tiger Woods is leaving Nike.
I was going to ask you about that. Are you sad about that?
It's heartbreaking. Absolutely. Yes. It bums
because
me out.
Even though you're not at Nike anymore, and you worked for what, 3 years to get a job at Nike, was it?
4.5.
And then you even worked at the store, and
Yep.
you were an EGOC, which is like you volunteer and do events, right?
I worked at the store, I volunteered, and then I became an Econ.
Sorry.
Econ's Nike spelled backwards. It's your job to know Nike backwards and forwards. Brand evangelist.
Yes. So people have to realize, like, you were willing to do, when they say work in the mailroom, like you were like, okay, I'm doing that.
Literally.
So now that you're not with Nike, do you wear other brands? Just curious.
I do, yeah.
Okay.
So I spent 10 and a half years in brand marketing.
Was it hard?
Is it hard? It was to start. Yeah, it was like the first time I put on some other shoes, I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like...
And I don't mean like random, small niche, because I was saying earlier, I talked to Tinker Hatfield, who's been a longtime friend of mine, and he did my shoe at Nike, but he would always wear these very chic niche, this is a Swiss company.
Oh, totally.
Even with Nike, he would do that. I'm talking about, like, have you put on a pair of Adidas or something, like a real... Have you done that yet?
I've put on an on-running shoe.
I don't know if that counts yet.
I know.
They're still sub.
Adidas, not yet. I have like a fear of God. They've collaborated with him, but Adidas, I did do I give them a lot of credit. I think what's sort of happened, I'm like Switzerland now. I like to give credit where credit's due. Mm-hmm. And I think the industry is better when you have like healthy competition. Like Adidas 100%. Made us so much better at Nike. I actually, I was listening to Phil Knight on a podcast, a very rare occurrence that he had recently. And he talked about how they were getting their butts kicked by Reebok. And they did this, his favorite campaign was a Revolution campaign. And it's like that they needed Reebok to like be competing heavy.
To push them, yeah.
And they're getting beat right now and like running,
it ebbs and flows.
It ebbs and flows. So like, guess what? Generally speaking, that you awaken that sleeping giant, they will come,
So Tiger was already at Nike when you went there, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was
there.
So
he's there. It doesn't make sense for their business anymore. It's for whatever the million reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think he's going to do?
They just filed TaylorMade just filed a trademark. So
okay.
My
and
instincts
do you feel like
and sources were always leaning towards TaylorMade doing the apparel for him. And then I think he'll sign with FootJoy. That's what he's been wearing. Whether he actually signs a contract with them.
Because Nike couldn't kind of get the shoe right for a minute, right? They couldn't put the resources to it because it wasn't selling enough or whatever. That you're not buying that.
No, I don't buy that.
I mean, they have the best designers for footwear.
You've seen that. You've worked with Tinker Hatfield. You've literally worked with the best. You've been to the Innovation Kitchen.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, you've been there.
What people don't realize. Okay, so I'll give you. I know what we're getting off topic. No. When we're getting off topic, when I was signed for cross training, because you go, well, you play beach volleyball, you didn't wear shoes. No, I was for training.
Yes.
Which actually makes a lot of sense. And I'd say things like, I want my foot to feel when I'm training, and I would like make like a springy thing, and Tinker would be like, okay. And I'm like, but I have very big feet. And so when I look down at my foot, I want it to look small. And he'd just be like, oh my God. I'm sure guys weren't doing that, but literally, and they literally design your footwear. The athlete has all the input. So people don't realize, I always think that's why Nike's always been so far ahead of everybody in the footwear. So for whatever reason, they weren't getting it. He was wearing FootJoy, and you are very passionate about. You didn't actually think it was not gonna happen, and then it ended up that he's out of Nike now.
I found it. I started to get wind months ago that this was like on the rocks, because he kept swearing the FootJoy. This is like, this is sacrilege. I mean, you do not do this, especially for an athlete of his ilk. So I just think he's old. He's at this point, he's at the end of his career.
Sure.
I think, you have kids, you go through things. He had a car accident. He almost lost his leg.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, he just decided he wasn't going to fool with the innovation, like what they could offer. He got something. I tell people too, like, and you would know this, but athletes that get to that level are like tweaky. Like they're a savant.
They're crazy?
The crazy. I think it's crazy a little bit, but I would call myself crazy too. But yes, like you got something off, or it's like this savant-like nature that can experience, like, everyone talks about Tiger, the way that he can hit a golf ball. He can tell you the difference. And like when they line up 100 golf balls, he can tell you the difference inside of the golf ball of what's happening, like with a strand.
Yeah.
And so I think that something, whatever it is, proprioception, he started to perceive something in that shoe. And I just don't know that he had the energy or willingness to like try to work on something new at this stage in his career to try to solve that. And I think he was like, I got to get back out there on that course. And this feels right to me right now.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that happen over the course of business relationships. I'm sure and by the nature of marketing, this is not a indictment on Nike. It's just that the industry in general, it's sort of, what have you done for me lately?
Oh, well, I aged out of Nike.
Totally.
Right. So I aged out because they were like, hey, listen, our for the most part, with the exceptions of like a LeBron, MJ, guys that are iconic, it was like, we're going for 12 to 22 because once we have you forever. So I aged out, probably close to 30. So yeah, that was just the way it was.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, for guys, that's like they're 25 or in football, you're like, you have a 2.8 year playing career.
Correct.
So,
in the NFL, people don't know that. Their average career, is it 3.2 or it's down to 2.8 years?
2.8 if you're like a running back or a linebacker. I think 3.8 for others.
Yeah. But, so marketing and brands and athletes, how has this NIL deal changed those relationships?
I don't think a lot, to be honest. A lot of the big brands are not taking big swings on this. So just yesterday, I'm sorry we keep talking about golf, but yesterday, a kid at Alabama, won a PGA tournament against all of the pros for the first time since 1991. I believe it was Phil Mickelson was the last person who did this. This kid, I love this story because Adidas, again, I got to give them credit. Like they went and signed this young man. And within NIL, so like Flage, Angel Reece, Haley Van Lith, they're the most fascinating case study in this to me because they're a Nike school. Flage has a deal with Puma, Angel Reece has a deal with Reebok, and Haley Van Lith has a deal with Adidas.
So for people listening, institution deals, so you'll see teams, they're all in either one brand or another.
Yes.
So you're talking about the institution deal with LSU is with Nike.
Yes.
And then you have 3 athletes where their off-court deals are with 3 different.
Yes,
right,
because they still are required, any team activity, they're required to wear the apparel and footwear that the school has negotiated a partnership with.
I wonder if that's going to change.
I think so eventually, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
That's going to be interesting.
They'll add that to the lawsuit list. There's like 7 or 8 currently pending against the NCAA, but once it starts getting...
So Adidas had this golfer already?
Yep, they signed this golfer. So he was playing in his
happy are they?
Outside of Alabama. So they signed him, and he wins this tournament. He gets all this media yesterday. TaylorMade did too. Shout out to my guys at TaylorMade. Like they signed him too. And even though that wasn't the school deal, he was playing with this stuff outside of his school-sanctioned activities. And golf is a little more wonky and like loosey with that stuff. But like, it's a huge win for them. So I think we'll see more of that. We almost saw that again. I have to give credit to Adidas. They signed Michael Penix and Rome Odunze, who were the 2 stars at University of Washington. And Washington went all the way to the national championship game. And so they almost had a deal. So they announced that NIL deal back in September, I think it was, October. And they were riding that train all season long. And professional sports, particularly football, it's so hard to make a bet in football. And they made it all the way. And they almost won the title. And you would have seen, I was really excited for it. I think you could have seen like a college athlete featured in maybe I don't know if they're going to do like a confetti moment national television commercial, but like at least something on social would be really cool. So those are very few and far between.
Sure.
It hasn't really changed the industry that much. I think what it does is opens up more opportunity for smaller brands. And that's where I'm going, hey, if you're a smaller brand, you can't afford a Tiger Woods, but you can afford this Nick Dunlap kid maybe. I mean, you could afford, basketball player or a football player who has an interesting name. There's all kinds of creative ways you can work with these athletes. And so that's just what really excites me about it.
What do you tell the athletes to market themselves? Because you do a lot of technical breaking down, like, hey, you have use, because your videos are very poppy and quick and short and condensed and full of information and bullet points. So if someone was listening to this and they were sort of thinking about marketing themselves, what are the ways that you think in the communication side, some tools that are available to them?
Well, the 86% of NIL deals are done through social media. So true NIL deals. So we're mostly talking about social media here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair conversation for any athlete and their family to I've sat in front of high school recruits and go, hey, if you want to participate in NIL, it's all going to be through social media. And we've discussed this. Social media is really hard. It's hard for people who don't have 16-hour-a-day jobs and sports and treatment and therapy and all that. So I think it's okay to say either yes, I want to participate in this, or no, I don't. I think it's fair, and then you recognize the trade-offs. But if you do want to participate in it, then people are following you for a reason. All athletes can share I think the trap most athletes fall into is they just share their media day photos, they share their game photos, and then occasionally I have a running joke with the football and basketball players, and then they do a fire fit pic where they're standing, not looking at the camera, and they're in a gas station. They usually take it at a gas station.
Why a gas station? They're pumping fuel and they're
and then
multitasking.
They're pumping fuel, and then I always go to the kids. I go, and they all start laughing. And I'm like, where are they? And they're like, at the gas station. And I'm like, are they looking at the camera? No. And I'm like, and what kind of car are they in front of? And they're like, a Hellcat. And I like do the next slide, and it's a Hellcat under the garage. And they're like, all these kids. They just like, it brings the house down. And it's just like, we're sheep. We all look around and we just want to like post what other people are posting. So to your point, like with the young ladies earlier, you can post yourself half naked and you can get a lot of engagement. Is that, but my question for you then is like, if you want that, is that the engagement you want? Do you want a bunch of middle-aged men following you? Is that the audience that you can monetize?
Well, and that's the other thing. There is a movement. I will say this because I know a little bit, is they will, so there's kind of this guy, Ben Greenfield. I don't know if you know who he is. He's sort of a wacky health and fitness guy. A guy like that might get paid more by sponsors because his fan base is fanatical and his conversion is high.
Exactly.
And so to your point, I think people sometimes only look at the numbers, but like Laird says, if you're going to have a knife fight, who's going to show up? Yeah. Right. And so when the conversion side, people, if you do that true thing, that authentic thing, companies are looking at that for conversion. So you talk about tools though, like green screen and other things that are available.
Instagram, TikTok. Instagram is still the most monetizable platform. So like I would say, first of all, vertical video. You need to get good at vertical video, and you don't need fancy camera equipment. You can use a mobile phone. But you got to figure out vertical video. Sometimes I think a lot of athletes, I think they overthink it. I won't keep using golf examples, but I did. Lululemon signed Minwoo Lee. They also, Callaway did too. And they had this video of him just like hitting multiple drives in a row. They had like one, and it was all shot on iPhone. Just like a microphone and an iPhone. And it's so engaging to the audience that cares about that. For golf porn people, yes, like totally. You. And there I was.
Look how clean that swing is.
Absolutely. One of my old friends, this couple, they called it Sporn. She would be like, what are you looking at 11 o'clock at night? He'd turn his computer around and be like Sports Center, or something. It's Sporn. But I saw a track and field long jumper this morning almost jump out of the pit, some guy somewhere. And it was so amazing. And sometimes I think athletes just right under their nose, they have an iPhone and they do incredible things. That can be great content. Then we just need to add then the kicker. What are you interested in? So I was working with a young woman at Stanford, and she is a bookworm. She played basketball, she could dunk, and she wanted to deal with like Barnes and Noble. And but I look at her social feed.
She wants to deal with Barnes and Noble
or
like
Amazon,
this.
Some book place. Yeah. But like there was nothing on her feed that said reading. I mean, you could maybe imply that because she was at Stanford. She probably can read pretty well. But
yeah, her passion for it.
Exactly.
She should do like book of the week and stuff.
That's it. That's what we started. Yeah. It was
that's so cool.
It was like Thinky Thought Thursday thing, and it was like, hey, how can we share? What are you thinking about based on what you're reading currently? And so that's just, you have to get some repetitions. The other thing that I have had to embody over the last 18 months that all of these athletes, and it's much harder when you're 20 years old, is you're gonna have to suck at something. I sucked at social media. I suck at green screen. The first time I finally went viral on TikTok was when I forced myself to create in that app using all of the tools in that app and like to get to know and understand it. And I had to fumble through it, you know? And so it's like, we have to do a little bit of that work to also put ourselves out there. All of my videos now are like, I'm starting to get in a rhythm, but I also know that's going to go away.
Well, I was going to say with AI, now you're going to have to learn a whole bunch of new tools and good luck.
Maybe. Yeah.
If I was like some badass college athlete and I was making enough, what I would do is I would pay a student that goes to my school, whatever, a couple $100 here and there, to film me and edit the video so I could focus on the things that only I can do.
Yes.
So if it's worth it, if the deals are sweet enough, pay a college student.
Totally.
Say, hey, listen, follow me here for an hour. Come to could somebody film you at your practice? Would they be allowed?
So they already have people doing that, and they need to be, I tell them, you're exactly right, and I do want to drill down on this. So one, they need to be best friends with the content teams. All these schools have content teams.
I know.
Florida State volleyball, they don't get as much as like Florida State football or whatever, but they need to be best friends with that photographer and videographer. I would say this anywhere in life. If you're like, be great, chummy with the people who can create content. I think not only just because you should be a good human and nice to all people, but like definitely be nice to your content creators.
Yeah, but I think get like a student that you're gonna and they're about you.
Totally.
And they get to know you and your rhythms and then your trip. I think that would be that's a dollar well spent. And I don't know, I'm going to get crazy. Could it be a tax write-off?
It could.
Yeah.
You're investing in your business if you have an LLC, I think.
Okay.
But that only costs you $300, as I told you earlier.
Yeah, Delaware people, Delaware.
Yeah, and so that's next level tax strategy.
I'm just saying, no, because time.
I know.
And if I say, hey, you got to go to practice, you go to the thing.
Yes.
Just film. Oh, I'm working on my mobility, or I've got an injury that I'm dealing with. Someone can film you while you're in the training room and whatever. So I just, want to remind people.
I just want to.
You can borrow that.
Reiterate that. No, I do the same thing. It's we all think early on when we're in a scarcity mindset. It's like, can I not? Oh, I need to save, or I can't spend on this. It's you're spending $200 to earn $2,000 for that deal that you would get. And you may end up spending $2,000 before you get a $2,000 deal. Yeah. But like that stuff is an investment in the future, and it's really scary to do that. I've done it. I've been doing it this last year. Me driving up here to do this is an investment. Yeah. No one's paying me to come do this, but it could lead to better things in the future. And so it's like people need to understand. I think these college athletes, we have drilled into young people, rightly so. The dangers of social media. So there's like the 1 to 1,000 negative effects. You could say one thing and it would be magnified 1,000-fold versus when you and I were teenagers. But the opposite is also true. You could do one positive thing and it can be exponentially celebrated by 1,000-fold. Or we can film this one conversation and it can go to 50,000 people. Yeah. So there are other sides of that where you can put in a small investment and reach a big upside. So I hope that they can start to understand those concepts.
So let's just talk really quickly about traditional marketing. I sort of noticed that you, in some ways, because of, it's gotten more conservative, that in certain ways marketing has actually gotten softer because people are afraid. Lawyers are afraid, teams are afraid, companies are afraid. And I made the assumption, and I think you corrected me a little bit with COVID, maybe participating in why you eventually transitioned out of Nike. And I thought in my mind, I was like, oh, I felt like you left Nike because you'd have this badass idea and you run up the flagpole and you couldn't get it approved.
That certainly plays into it. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, corporate.
Totally.
So
corporate.
There's storytelling, and it's this weird fine line with marketing. What athletes do you see in professional sports? And I know they have teams and they have all this, people around them. Who do you think, what athletes come to mind where you go, oh, they're doing it right? That you like the way they're doing it? And obviously I can tell you one of mine, it just came to me, that? Was Beast Mode is Marshawn Lynch. Because also he has less rules. Yep. It was like Charles Barkley in my day. Yes. They could get away with stuff because Tiger Woods couldn't say certain things, but certainly CB could say whatever. And people are like, well, that's just CB. And
that was his brand.
Yeah. Yes. And so it's really important also not to pretend to be someone you're not, because it catches up with you.
Yes.
So authentically. And that is honestly who CB is. And Marshawn Lynch is kind of outrageous and fun, and he can get away with it.
Yep.
But who do you see that you go, oh man, they are hitting the sweet spot with their marketing and their communication, and why?
Yeah. I love Tom Brady personally. So
really?
Yeah. So I happen to know he has this great young crew of creators who there was this cast of that generation of athlete. Like you heard about Derek Jeter, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. They were all like late to the social, and they're kind of like, I'm stars, I'm going to the Hall of Fame. Why would I mess with this? And Tom started trusting a couple of these young content creators to help him with some Instagram stuff. And he went crazy viral. And he was like, oh, wow, okay, I see the power of this. And so he invested in this media agency. It's called Shadowline. I'm working on a project with them finally. And I've gotten to know them over the last couple of years, and I just love the business model. I mean, so a guy like Tom Brady, who can be at the top of his game, can see the power of this and go, okay, I really believe in this. LeBron is another one. He invested uninterrupted along with Mav Carter. So Naomi Osaka started her own media company. A lot of the female athletes invested in together, whether that was Alex Morgan or I believe Megan Rapinoe, Sue Bird is an investor in them. And so I think they see the power of the media, and then they invest in their own. And so the old model of athlete would have relied upon media to get the story out. I'm sure you probably had to deal with some of that.
Well, I was, but in my day, I was like, oh, thank God they're investing in my image, because we didn't have access in our pocket. Right. So it was different. If you didn't have a big company behind you, where would they see you unless you were on the TV every week? And in an alternative sport like beach volleyball, if I didn't have Nike and other companies behind me, no one would have ever seen me. Right. We actually were on ESPN weirdly back in the early days. But to your point, now they have this. So these athletes or people that see you, this goes back to investing in yourself. And I want to highlight that point, because every athlete, it's sort of like stretching. Or drinking that extra glass of water, or going to bed an hour earlier. These small investments that you make in yourself, they pay back. The dividends is beyond. And so I couldn't stress that enough. What image is fun for you in marketing of what professional athlete where you go, oh man, they are just going for it?
Fun.
Yeah, like, right or now, just radical. Or
fun? I mean, Flage at LSU is super fun.
Yeah.
She's a rapper. I've gotten to know her and her mom over the last couple of years. Like they're having fun. Let's see, who else is fun?
Or edgy, because I feel like one of your criticisms was like everyone's sort of playing it safe.
Yeah, totally. And I get it. You got to hedge, and it's not worth it due to cancel culture. But it's also okay to
rock the boat.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you try to please everybody, you please no one. So I've actually even seen, okay, so I'll give you an example. This is not necessarily endorse this, but so Quinn Ewers, a quarterback at Texas, he's loves hunting, and he's always posting these pictures of holding up, a dead deer or whatever. And my PR instinct in me goes, oh my God, what's he doing? Why is people letting him do that?
There's a lot of people who like hunting.
I know. Well, this kid who won this golf tournament yesterday, I look at his Instagram feed and his third image is him holding up some dead animal, and I'm like, my immediate PR sense is wait, oh no. But you know what? There's a whole audience of people who love hunting. And I'm saying you could do it with tact or grace or whatever, But like, as long as you're, sort of true to the whatever tenets of that community and what you're doing the right way, that opens up a whole new lane. Because guess what? Everybody else wants the car deal and the Gatorade deal and whatever. How many quarterbacks are getting
Four people are getting those.
I love that. Actually, I saw a friend of mine sent out a newsletter this morning about Wrangler investing in NIL. And like the Texas quarterback who loves hunting, like that's freaking who should be in that's who should be in Wrangler jeans, like, I just love that, like, kind of, it's just different, not trying to play the same game that everybody else is, So that to me is, I try to just speak and I say, like, be distinct, defined, and real. Authentic, I think sometimes that word just gets overused, but like, it's okay to be real with you. And then, but also like, hey, I was a knucklehead when I was that age, like be real.
Well, and be professional.
Yeah, real and professional.
I think it's understanding, oh, wait a second, I have opportunity and I'm going to be a professional, but I'm going to be myself.
Yes.
And I think if they can accomplish that or have somebody who gives them a little nudge and goes, hey, maybe too far, or it's okay, go ahead. And it's interesting for women, because for women, we really are held by a different standard, because like you were talking about the basketball player, to be, boisterous and, sort of like I'm great and I'm the best as a woman, very few women can get away with that. Totally. So when you see one that can pull it off, for me, it was Cheryl Miller.
Yes.
Totally. I was like, whoa, that is so brave.
Yeah.
Because usually as women, we're taught to do it a little bit differently. And Serena's a different example because she's in a singular sport. Yes. When you're on a team sport, it's like, we're a team. Yeah. Remember Mia? It was like, no, it's a team effort. She never wanted to be singled out. So it was all these interesting ways that people do it. So I have to just ask one thing, because people don't realize, a lot of times you'll see these companies and they have these coveted products, whether it's a jersey or a shoe. And now companies are doing sort of these wild things to keep resellers from getting items. So for people who don't know, it's like, do you really love those Jordans, or do you really love that? Or are you just going to wait online and resell it?
Yes.
Can you just share a couple anecdotes of companies doing some pretty extreme things to get it into the hands of people who love whatever that sport or, item is?
Yep. Let's see here, Skate Shop recently did like a Nike SB one. So Nike SB is Nike skateboarding, and they make really highly coveted like Nike Dunks sometimes. And so there was a skate shop, I believe it was in Hawaii, it might have been out here in LA, but they make someone do a kickflip to be able to leave with the shoes. And so you'd have to do like a skateboarding trick to be able to purchase and take the shoes away. So that was basically to like prevent people from getting it. I saw one from a golf company, these Travis Scott golf shoes. A golf company over in London made people hit on the simulator, and for a man, I think you had to hit the ball 200 yards, and for a woman, you had to hit over 150 yards. And you had to basically prove that you were somewhat of a golfer to be able to purchase the shoes. The last one that I would say, again, to this sort of cancel culture, backbiting, Tracksmith did one where, this is very different from high heat sneakers, but they did a singlet for people who qualified for the Boston Marathon, and it was only available. You had to basically submit your qualification or your race number to be able to purchase it. And all these people got so upset and like, oh, this, and I think it's because they've been doing this story, which is beautiful, by the way. I commented on one of the other things this morning. They're talking about the amateur is from the Latin of love, and people who do it for the love. And then they've been trying to like, be more inclusive with their, marketing and all that. And so they've kind of gotten sucked up in maybe not being as true to their roots, which I would argue is like this sort of, you got to qualify for the Boston Marathon if you want to buy this thing. These like nerdy, skinny, fast runners, and all these people, and they cowed to the mob and like pulled it down. And I think I would, I don't know. I would like to think, I was not in their shoes. I don't know all the factors, but it's like, it's okay to piss off a bunch of people. In fact, you probably should be. Like, if you're not sharp enough with your brand, if you're not upsetting some people, or at the very least, a large percentage of people should be like, I don't get it. And that's like exactly when you know that you have a good audience who does get it. One of my favorite things, like Tracksmith did this hour-long they followed this woman. It's called the Church of the Run, and she runs in the snow for like an hour. They run like a 10K with it, and literally there's no. I think they have a small like string thing under it, and it's literally this tracking camera, and you're just listening to her breathe and
that sound
run on the snow, and it's like this beautiful like meditation on what it's like to go running solo, and runners get that. And I've run over the course of my life. I don't love running, but like I get that thing. I hope that most people who don't love running look at that and go, stupid, that's boring. They should, because runners connect with that. It's a spiritual experience. Yeah. So I think that's a principle that not enough brands are willing to embrace.
Where did you get inspiration from? Because coming up, working for Nike and having, you have deadlines. It's like, yes, it's creative, but you have to deliver product. You have, there's a lot of goes on with that, a lot of moving parts. Where did the ideas come? Were they in your sleep? How did they show up for you? Where did they come?
Yeah. I think the Lord blessed me was just like my mind never stops.
A busy mind.
It's a busy mind. It nearly killed me, I think, in my adolescence when I couldn't figure out how to harness that energy, and I needed to quiet it, and I turned to drugs to do that. But I think later, through the process of recovery and through healing and through therapy and yoga and all these kinds of things, I've learned how to channel it and fuel it into creativity. So I did not have a lot of the benchmarks of the general people who are being brought into Nike, former college athletes, MBAs, really smart people, double majors, like done everything right in their life, like type A, they're great. And there's a lot of brilliant, very creative people there as well.
Yeah. What was your major? It was like not history, but what was it?
Ancient history.
Ancient history.
Yeah. I mean, it's a history degree, but my focus was on Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire.
Nike was like an empire.
Exactly. I mean, Nike goddess. So I have the Nike goddess tattooed on my arm.
I have one up there somewhere.
Beautiful. Yes, it's right there. Amazing. Nike was the goddess of victory. And, what I figured out is that ancient history is studying the stories that last forever, and marketing is nothing more than storytelling. And so I learned through repetition, through reading and writing, the stories that last forever and what makes a compelling story. Why do we care about Alexander the Great 3,000 years later? Why do we care about Julius Caesar or Augustus or Cleopatra? And so I think that was the special sauce. Now, I probably wouldn't have taken me 5 years to get my job at Nike if I had gotten something like a business degree, if they had let me in.
Because sometimes when it's paper, I think you had a entry I saw where you shared how you would lose out to like college athletes and who had double majors or internships and things like that, and how that only made you drill down on your own strengths.
Yes.
So I think it's important for people to know that there's a lot of ways to get there, but it's not easy.
It's hard. And
so you get this job, you do the marketing part for 10 years, you work with the NFL, you do all these things. Was there a collaboration with an athlete or a project that really just brought you, it was like a full expression of your creativity?
One that we almost had, there's a few. I mean, I have to give credit to things like Nike. Like, yeah, there was a lot of bureaucracy and all that, but creativity can thrive in constraint as well. And so that became the name. I came in and I knew that I started to see that people really appreciate my creativity. So I started having these brainstorm activities. We do these fun like brainstorming ideas with marketing teams, and it was like, oh wow, this is really fun. I love you can feel the energy in the room, like yes, and what if we did that, and oh yeah. And the challenge at Nike is like so many things have been done. I'll never forget. We were brainstorming launching the NFL jersey again, and we brought up something like launch, like what if we sent it to space, or because I don't know, we were gonna do Houston or something. So it was like, oh yeah, we did that in '97. I was like, I'm sorry, wait, what? We launched a. And somebody was like, oh yeah, we launched this thing into space. Yeah, it's been done. So like there's always this, it's a different level at Nike. And athletes it's really hard to get to number one, but it's so much harder to stay at number one. And so Nike's usually number one, and you're having to just beat yourself year over year. Favorite projects, super random one that I started and then the rest of the team finished with, like, Gibson Hazard was this young, like, music video director who had started to get some waves, and I looked him up and found, I think a lot of people make him, you need to find some commonality. So I found this dude, he was an athlete in college and he had dropped out and had been making music videos. And they were these incredible, like, otherworldly, wild, like, virtual reality, like, stuff. And I was like, this dude could crush sports. Like, if we turned him loose, you know? And DM'd him on Instagram, and he responded a few days later and was like, yeah, I would love to. And so
I work with Nike. Could we work with you? That probably makes it great.
It's not a hard
great
sell.
calling card.
But honestly, like, at that point, he had just done a Drake video and he had done something else. Like, so he was, like, getting early traction. So, like, he might have said, hey, music is my thing.
It reminds me sometimes SNL, less now, but they used to sometimes throw out a musical artist. It was always the musical artist that somebody saw early.
Yes.
They used to do that very beautifully. I think, but what I get from that is that there's an invisible tie. Yeah. You shared that about, I think you were criticizing, I don't know if it's Houston, not Houston. Who is it that you don't like their marketing from Texas? The Mavericks.
Oh gosh.
Is it the Mavericks?
Yeah, the Mavericks.
But there's a musical past, a jazz past, and you were complimenting. So it's also realizing that if there's a tie, but it's not obvious, it's still intuitive.
Yes.
So I thought that was a really good.
Yeah, and I think in this world of collaborations, everybody wants to just grab two big names now and, like, put them together. And we have to find and you can stretch that. So I would argue that one that I was giving credit to, the Dallas Mavericks, had this story of, like, Dallas is actually this old city of, like, where this birthplace, had this really great birthplace of jazz, and it led to the development in the United States. So they pulled Leon Bridges, who's actually from Fort Worth, and most other people.
Same state, it's okay.
It's the same state, right? Yeah, it's Texas. You can drive 14 hours and still be in the same state. But, you know, it's down the road from Dallas. It's not quite Dallas. So that would be my only, like, 1 point deduction. But he's close enough. But, you know, there's that common bond, and you have those two names, and that's great. You know, it's important to just find someone who has an anchor in that thing. I was criticizing Puma and A$AP Rocky, I think, originally, because I had never seen A$AP Rocky talk about his love of Formula One racing, you know, and all of a sudden they want to trot him out there as the face of Formula One for Puma. And I was kind of like, oh, well, I mean, it would help if he had maybe once talked about Formula One once in his life. Some people came and said, hey, talked about Mercedes and stuff. And I was like, okay, maybe, fair enough.
Because of Lewis?
Yeah, well,
Lewis
no,
Hamilton?
just Mercedes. I mean, Mercedes, we all...
Oh, come on.
Which of us has not declared that we want a Mercedes in our life? Yeah, I do not think it was around the paddock or, like...
So I think Lewis, that's an important, you know, going back to young athletes, you know, we all have something to contribute.
Yes.
So when you go to these schools and they bring you in to talk to athletes, what are the main things, just so I make sure that we reinforce them for these athletes to think about, because these are a lot of decisions and they're big ones.
Yeah. I say, hey, there's a lot of people. We have your personal brand sits between how you view yourself and how the world views you. Your personal brand sits right in between in these, like, concentric circles. And most people will focus on the external and go, okay, what do I need to be posting on TikTok? What do I need to be saying? What do I need to be performing? What platforms do I need to go be on? To me, all of that is cart before the horse. We need to figure out who you are. What makes you tick? What are you passionate about? What do you want to get out of this experience in college? Where do you want to go? And once we start to figure that out, then we can utilize these external tools to take you there. Because you may say, oh, everybody says I need to be on TikTok. Well, what is it that you want to do, right? Like, so, like, I work with a couple quarterbacks. Maybe TikTok is not maybe YouTube would be the platform for you, where you can actually break down defenses and you can be signaling to your audience that are quarterback loving, want to learn offenses, they want to know everything about you. Not only that, you signal to your audience, but then you're signaling to future pros that I'm cerebral, I know this game, I love it, I live it, I break it down. So, like, there's ways to think about that. And so my encouragement for them is just like, gosh, all of us need to do this. You know this, Gabby. Like, you lead retreats for grown adults who are like, I haven't stopped and thought about what I want in 25 years. And so many of us in life have not had the luxury to be able to do that. Which I think we'll get to, but at 21 years old, I sat for a year incarcerated and sat around to think about, what do I want my life to look like going forward? And so I realize now, looking back on that, was a great privilege for me in some ways to like just go, Jordan, stop. Like, what is it that you want this thing to look like? And as I was driving up the hills in Malibu, I was having a reflection, or I was actually drinking my green juice at this beautiful.
That's very California of you.
I love.
You were here for 30 minutes, and you had
I was
a green
eating kale
juice.
and green juice. I love it. I love eating healthy. I love like treating my body well, because I treated it so poorly for so long. And I do have to reflect on moments like this, because all I wanted was to not stick a needle in my arm. Yeah. And I just wanted to have like a boring, dull life. And here I am, like flying to LA and getting off the plane and driving up here and grabbing a green juice and talking on a podcast. Super fun. But my encouragement is to think about what do they actually want out of this, and where do they want to go, and what do they want to do, because that will then inform the type of brand deals they want to make, what they should be communicating on social, if they should be communicating on social. And so many people just start shouting advice in their ears. Post on TikTok more, post on TikTok, use trending audio, do all this stuff. So stupid. It's like, well, what, that doesn't help if we don't know what the end goal is. And so, yeah.
I think that's true to everything in life, to follow that inside,
Amen.
I really appreciate that. So you're at Nike for years and years. Prior to that, and you put this on your website, and it's actually the first thing you put on your website, that you were a heroin addict.
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't want to put that at the top is not that I think it's a distraction. I think it's great. I think it's just so fascinating that I didn't want to get lost there.
Totally.
Because actually that's probably more of the type of interview I would do.
Yeah.
I mean, I love sports, but this podcast is usually about like health and how to take care of yourself and all these things. But it's not that it's surprising, but I really appreciate that you put it top of list. But why? First of all, what was going on?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
what happened?
Led me to that path.
Yeah, I mean, and I live with somebody who I joke, if they didn't find the ocean, could easily be dead or in jail.
Absolutely, yes.
Like, this is someone who this is greatness. And I'm like, yes. And it was 1 inch from either somebody who could be dead or in jail. Totally. So that energy that you're talking about, this energy that creates and does all this stuff for a lot of people. And I'm not saying it's more male, but young male.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel it sometimes gets misunderstood. We try to shove young men, like, sit down on your desk and be quiet and all these things. And, don't cry and don't tell me how you feel. So I think there's a lot of cases of men, and maybe they are incarcerated, that given either the chance or the environment would be brilliant at something.
Yes.
So what happens? Because that's not, I smoked some weed.
Totally,
and,
went out drinking one night. In fact, yes, to your point, it was a big source of concern for me. I did, and I will say, actually, I should go back and, I had a lot of creative projects. The two most meaningful years of my time at Nike were in Nike Women's. So like loving, yes, I got to do all this sexy stuff. I flew around the world, like helping with the biggest athletes in the world, a lot of male athletes, doing big commercials and stuff like that. But the two most meaningful years were in Nike Women's. And it was when trying to help Nike figure out, how do we really serve women well? And it was really helpful for me to not only just understand women better, help me understand my wife, help me understand my sister and my mom better, and just in general, I became just a better human. And so much of that is the team that I got to work with, and it was really challenging. And so anyway, but in the best of ways, That's a guy who has a wife and a daughter. And amen.
It's like, it's so challenging.
It was. But yeah. Anyway, let's go back to the, but I was saying, like, I have a son now. And so I see there's just some challenges with males in America. At least we have sort of a weird epidemic going on with this kind of purposelessness, and we're sitting guys.
There's a retreat. They're retreating.
Yes, totally. They're falling out of the workforce. They're living with their parents. They're not having sex. They're like,
that's the weirdest.
Vaping in the basement. That's the weirdest.
That's the weirdest. Not having sex.
We've got some weird stuff going on in our culture right now. But so I was kind of at the very beginning of this. I grew up in a great home. My parents have never spoken a negative word to me ever. They breathed life into me. They breathed life under my wings. In fact, I think one of the reasons that I am so creative is because of the confidence that my parents bolstered in me. Creativity is risk, and you're just sort of stepping out to do something that hasn't been done, or like taking a risk to kind of do this thing and try something. And when we're in a fear or like a trauma response or whatever, we can't take that risk. And I think my parents like love and encouragement really bolstered that. So I always want to acknowledge that, especially now as a parent. And so
you're hoping that the price you're going to pay is going to be softened somehow.
I'm trying to pay my penance.
Sure.
Yes. No, I'm not. I know a giant karmic boomerang is coming my way.
Was it smooth sailing till 16 or something?
No. It was pretty smooth until maybe like 12, 11. I think so. I was obsessed with sports. Played all sports. Loved Bo Jackson because Bo played all sports, or the campaign was. Bo knows golf, Bo knows racing, Bo knows basketball, Bo knows football, Bo knows baseball. And I loved all those sports, but I was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. Mm-hmm. And so in Dallas, Texas, if you want to continue to play and you live basically in the city, and you're going to big junior highs and high schools, like you need to be able to play one. You need to be really good at least one. And so I dropped out of golf. I probably had the best promise in golf, and it wasn't cool. Tiger Woods had not hit the scene yet, and it wasn't cool. Basketball was cool. I wanted to play basketball. I also wanted to play football, but I only played 1 year in 5th grade, and that was very clear. I was not cut out for football. So I tried out for the basketball team. I couldn't make it, and I just didn't have I watched my 7-year-old son now has practice. My daughter, she comes home from piano, and she'll start to play, or my son will want to go practice. And I did not have the practice gene. I'm like Allen Iverson before him. It's just like practice. Like I couldn't get it. And later in my life, I totally get it. Like I want to sharpen. I want to get better. I just didn't have. I don't know how that comes, but it didn't come naturally to me. And so I wanted to lower the goal and dunk with a mini ball and like have fun with my friends. I didn't want to work on my left-handed dribble. And I think it's maybe that gene that you're talking about where you just need that stimulation and you want to go for it. And when we lived in Oregon, I sort of looked around like, gosh, maybe this was what I was missing. I grew up as a city kid. The most fun we rode our bikes around everything, but it was like going to the mall was like the thing, it wasn't hitting ocean and waves. And I love it so much. Like I love California. I love being here. I love the West Coast. I love trees and plants. My wife has put a moratorium on my plant buying, because there's no more plants allowed in the house. They're everywhere. But I love all that stuff. And I maybe didn't, steward that enough. And so I fell out of sports, and it was kind of like musical chairs. I had dropped the golf and I had left that behind. I had dropped football, tennis, like anything that I had played, baseball. I had a chance to go play like in select soccer, but my parents sat me down and were like, hey, this is a big investment. Yeah. And it's a lot, and we're willing to fund it, but you have to be like all in on this if you want. And I respect them for that. I appreciate that conversation they have with me. And I was kind of like, I don't want soccer to be my whole life. And so I think this was kind of the early stages of specialization when they were kind of forcing you to pick a path. And so anyway, the music stopped, and I didn't have any of that stuff left. And all my friends who were like athletes all went off to their sports, and there I was. And I was sort of friends with everybody. I still pride myself on that to some degree. I can get along with anyone, but I kind of gravitated towards, just anybody doing drugs and all that. So I started getting high at about 13, 14, drinking. And I think it was this really bad combination of adolescent angst, purposelessness, a lot of pain. My grandfather had died at that age. I had a couple of had my little heart broken a couple times. And you add all of this stuff, you lose your positive outlet, you lose your, positive figures in your life, you lose the, my conception of a girlfriend at the time, and adolescence was really hard. And so I found something that would treat all that angst and pain. And
how does a teenager get access to heroin, though?
Oh gosh, tell me about it.
No, is it you have to steal to get money to buy it, or how does that work? Because that's a That's not, you're not taking your parents' booze out of the booze cabinet.
Out of the cabinet, exactly.
And that's freaking ballsy too, by the way. But that same marketing, like, here's my idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ballsy.
Yeah. Well, you do have to be a combination of kind of reckless and foolish, and then a little bit of that.
So are you 15, 16?
Yeah, 15 got introduced. I was hanging out with some older kids. This is the beginning of the opiate epidemic.
Oh yeah.
So I missed fentanyl.
Thank God.
I missed fentanyl by literal months. I've retraced, I've gone back and read a lot of literature on this stuff. And one of my first friend who died of an overdose died when I was, just maybe 6 months out of jail. And so I was about a year and a half clean at that point, and my first friend died, and then subsequently lost so many more.
Yeah. So are you talking about, are you really saying more like oxy or pills?
No. So heroin was introduced in a snortable powder form. It was black tar heroin. You could break it down and then you could snort it. So it was different than like you're watching
Shooting
Basketball Diaries or whatever, the movies, Train Spotting.
Oh yeah.
It didn't have to go that grimy. So it made its way to like middle class, suburbs, trailer parks, inner city. I mean, it did everything now. Like, it wasn't just your old, Philadelphia, New York, gritty streets. And so it came from Mexico. I was in Texas. So this Mexican black tar heroin started to come up, and it was cut. It was called Chiva. And it started to make its way into America in a lot of different ways. And so I was kind of in the early wave of that. So I got caught up in that and basically just spent the next several years in addiction and just couldn't get out of it. And so...
Could your parents recognize it?
Yes, after a couple of years.
Because what's weird, and I can say this just from different experiences as a parent, is, there was an expression I heard when I was in high school, to the pure, all things are pure. And someone told me that at one point there were some indigenous tribes that they'd be on the shore and they couldn't see a sailboat that was in the ocean because they'd never seen one. Yeah. So they couldn't recognize it. Sure. And so I think people go, well, the parents, how do they not know? It's like, well, if you're not doing it and you're not around it, it's very difficult. It's sort of like you don't, and you're there. Yeah. Right. So you have a couple years, and then do you ask for help? Do you get in trouble? I mean,
all the above. I got arrested for the first time at 14, got arrested again at 19 for small possession charges. Mm-hmm. And then I was just constantly in trouble with the law, with the school, with everybody. I just was getting all kinds of tickets, minors in consumption, minor in possession, fake driver's license. I mean, it was always something. I was always in trouble. And, this brain that I have now that can do fun, smart things a lot of times was just being used for all kinds of nefarious reasons. And so... you basically end up at 21 years old, and the state of Texas says, hey, this is your third strike now. And they gave me a chance. They gave me several chances. They would give me probation and all that. And then they said, okay, we're giving you like one last chance. We're giving you this prison treatment program. So I went to a prison unit in Texas, had to wait for that for about 6 months, and then went to this prison unit for another 6 months, where you're on a prison unit. And you do like some groups during the day. They call it like a therapeutic community. Mm-hmm. I use that term very loosely.
Because are you just teaching each other new bad stuff?
Well,
I'm kidding.
Well, there's some of that, but I mean, some of the tools could have been effective. A lot of these places have been shut down. They've been, it's not helpful. So I believe I was the outlier. I am an outlier with an addiction to my knowledge. So there's something like 93% of people who are in addiction or alcoholism have at least 3 or more adverse childhood experiences. So you're dealing with some form of trauma, usually physical, often sexual, really bad scenarios, particularly in incarceration, especially with men in incarceration. I believe, 8 out of 10 men in incarceration did not have a positive father in their home or present. Right. And so...
that must have made you feel shitty. Kind of. I would imagine why knowing all this and being like, what's my problem?
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like because I've had experiences where I'm like, why would I feel that way? Because nothing's. I would imagine it must have been an interesting extra layer.
It was confusing. I think I was like, people would be like, what is the thing? People have these big breakthroughs, and I was like, I don't know. Like, what do you mean? Like,
You're like my hardwiring and I'm sensitive?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't articulate. So many years later, I can figure this stuff out. Like I know, but God, ask a young man to say that he's sensitive. Like I know that in the truest sense of the word, like I am highly sensitive. There's this personality type I actually found. I don't know whether it's, whatever, but I found it to be really helpful. Highly sensitive personality. And I am a high sensation seeking, highly sensitive person.
Oh.
And so it's basically, I think most of us as a male, we view that as a negative term, right? But I've actually realized it's my superpower. Mm-hmm. So I sense everything. This is why I can speak in a room. I know very quickly whether I've lost their attention, whether they're paying attention to me, whether they're in the mood for, emotional or energetic, or whether I need to be funny or what, and so it took me so long at Nike to realize like not everyone in the world knows exactly what pair of shoes and what brand they're wearing and all these other, and what kind of socks they're wearing from the moment they walk into a room. I just pay attention to that stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. And so much of us, and like what I would do with athletes, is figuring out what are those God-given talents that we have that then we need to bring to the surface, that just saying not everybody has that. That's not the way everybody's wired. Mm-hmm. And so that was a process over a long period of time to realize. I think it was just this, I, to my knowledge, do not have that childhood trauma. But I had a swirling of effects that all kind of happened at a really perfect storm mm-hmm. of like a pretty sensitive soul going through really hard things, death and breakups and losing your passion in sports and adolescence. And you introduce this thing that helps calm all that, mm-hmm. not only my mind, but my heart, and it's a painkiller. You look at pain killing. People are often treating the emotional pain that they're going through when you're dealing with addiction. So
how about coming out of that? Yeah. How does one rebuild their life? Because sometimes we get labeled, we label ourselves, mm-hmm. and you built this life out of this. What were the first steps to that rebirth mm-hmm. and building a life? Because that, I would imagine, could be daunting.
Yes, absolutely. It was. Again, I would point out that I had two positive and present parents, which is not a luxury that a lot of people have. Mm. And so while they were kind of done with me at that point, they at least visited me, I think, twice during that year. And maybe more, but not much more. And my sister didn't come. She still to this day will apologize for not coming, but she was done with me, like she was at Texas. She had done all the things right. She had seen my path, not all the things she would tell you, she was
your younger sister?
Yes. Yeah. And she's amazing. And but she was done with me, and my parents were done with me too. They kicked me out. They had cut me off. And I think that may have helped me. I don't know that it is the strategy that everyone should employ, but so I got out. I went to the Salvation Army, which is like a halfway house in downtown Dallas, and lived there while I kind of started to put one foot in front of the other. I started working at the Sunglass Hut, and then just kind of working a part-time job. And I actually worked full-time at the Sunglass Hut for a while. And then was going to meetings, get in recovery, got a sponsor, and was, going through that process was really rocky and hard. And then I finally found a guy who kind of reached out to me and was just like, hey, I'm going to sponsor you. I'm going to walk you. It was this crazy moment. I talk about it in the I Am Second film that's on my site. But, and I got walked into recovery and found a really good community of people who were kind of walking in the same path. And really, we were all just broken and bedazzled, but trying to piece it all together, mm-hmm. trying to be accountable to one another and try to be better. And I met my wife in recovery. And so I really lucked out in that way. And then I had my parents, at least. My dad had gone to college. I think my mom had regretted not going. And so they really pushed me to consider it. And they were like, you're so smart, you should do this. And I have my grandparents are really smart and academic and all these things. And so they really pushed me. And so I went to community college for one summer semester, take one class. And then it was like, okay, I can do it. And then it was like, okay, take two classes. And then it was like, oh, okay, I think I could do that. And it was like, okay, take one semester of 12 hours, and started putting that one foot in front of the other. And then, eventually went through school into college. I went to SMU. I applied to go. I probably would have gone somewhere like farther away, but I was like only a year into recovery, I think.
But that's a nice school too, because it's faith-based. So at least it's like you're getting support.
Yeah,
right?
It was the main benefit of SMU was I don't think there was a lot of faith really there. There's a lot of finances at SMU, but there was and while I didn't have those, I had small classes, and that was and I got federal aid to pay for my education. So I had a couple things. One, there were tools available. Everybody who's incarcerated talks about these resources that are available. Like, are there enough? Are they in the right place? We could have that debate. I have a lot of hot takes on the criminal justice system, but there were some, and most guys will talk about it, plan it, and then not do anything. And I stuck with a couple of those. So like they paid a few $1,000s. I got the state of Texas paid for usually my books most semesters. And I had to go once a semester and meet with a counselor, and that was like my check off. And then they would give me like a check to write for my books and all that. The federal government, I got Pell Grants to pay for my education. And so there's some legislation recently passed where they can allow Pell Grants to pay for incarcerated men and women to get education, because education will lead to liberation and freedom. We punish and humiliate and prevent people from getting back in the workforce. And I hope that people can see my experience, that when I had a softer landing, when I had support, when I had people encouraging me to go in the right way, when I had resources to pay for my education, I took advantage of some of those, and look at what my life has been able to come. It's amazing.
I can't help but think that journey you went on, though, makes you more, maybe I would say, compassionate and even easier to relate to these athletes that you're trying to help right now, because a lot of them come from really hard places. Yeah. And so weirdly, you building your life and building who you are and finding out what are your interests and going through a hard time makes you more, compassionate. And it just is that reminder over and over that especially the hard things that we go through, if we can survive it and learn from it, that they just always catapult us. And
yes,
I really appreciate that you keep that on your docket, because you have a lot of things you can talk about. You can talk about marketing, you can help athletes. It's all very sexy.
Yes.
But you keep that in there because, a lot of people are navigating this.
Totally.
And I always tell people, like, I'm a very linear thinker, but I'm married to a very sensitive person who's very creative.
Yes.
And I said, I've never met an addict who wasn't sensitive.
Yeah.
I just haven't.
Totally.
And so it's not like, oh, what's wrong with them? It's like, oh no, they're experiencing the world in a very different way. Yeah. And so I just think that that's an important reminder.
Very insightful. I think a lot of people just view, and it makes it really hard to deal with people through their shenanigans. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I am a super pretty liberal, I think we should legalize drugs. I think we should, I mean, I'll go as far as to say sometimes we should give people clean needles so they just don't die. There's all kinds of ways that I'll go. And yet, when I have a, grandmother who talks to me about her son who keeps using, and he's got a 4-year-old daughter that he leaves alone, or whatever, or drives drunk with their kids in the car. These are very hard things to deal with, and they are unlovable in a lot of ways. But I think when we can go beyond, and I rattle off those statistics for a reason, because I think a lot of us just think that, I don't know, somebody's just getting drunk because they love it. And if you're moving into that place, addiction is usually defined by continued use despite negative consequences.
Yeah.
And so most of us have that response that goes, okay, this thing hurt me, I'm not going to do it again. And it gets broken, or they get overwhelmed with whatever life or the thing is, and that is what they're using to treat what's going on.
The pain. And do you think that your love of all athletes and all sports that's why you put your sights on Nike, because they were the king. So you're like, I love all these sports, all those things. I'm going to work for that company. Do you think that was the why?
I have a bizarre and inexplicable. Okay, so I had a next door neighbor. I graduated college. I got a degree in history. I couldn't get into the business school. I wanted to go teach and coach, and I applied to go basically like teach. I was going to teach history and coach like JV basketball or something. Like I just wanted to settle down and like just not rock the boat and just whatever. And my next door neighbor, I bought a pair of shoes on sale at Finish Line. I come home and my next door neighbor works at this running specialty account. His name's Duncan. He's like the Yoda of footwear. He's a savant when it comes to like fitting footwear and all this stuff. He's amazing. He's South African and he has this great accent and all this stuff. But and I go, wow, Duncan. It's like the Home Improvement. Probably dating myself here, but like Tim and his neighbor, like over the fence. We were literally over the fence, and I was like, Duncan, I just bought another pair of shoes against my will. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I am obsessed with Nike. I've had a bizarre brand loyalty from the time I was a kid, and I'm sure my name and Michael Jordan was coming up at the time, and Deion Sanders and all these athletes, Bo Jackson. That it all contributed. The machine, certainly got me. It got me, yeah, totally. But I also, I wrote this in a newsletter last week. I was reflecting, like, as cheesy as this sounds, when I got out of incarceration, I was very determined I got into working out while I was locked up. Mind, body, spirit. I knew I had to give myself a chance. I had to do something drastically different. I mean, drastically different, or I was going to go right back to the way I'd been living before. And so I wanted to keep into working out. And I remember going to Academy and trying to buy some Nike Pro, like, workout gear on sale. And I felt like Superman putting that stuff on. Like I felt stronger,
Yeah.
And that may sound weird to people, but you put the costume on, and it was like, I felt like I could work out better, like by putting it on. And so, yes, all those athletes, I also believed that there was this bit of like, we mentioned John McEnroe earlier, like there was this rebel spirit at Nike. And you have some of that as well. Like Nike is best when there's like a rebellious spirit in them.
Yeah.
And I think I always sensed, we mentioned Charles Barkley and others, that they would welcome like misfits and rebels.
Well, Bowerman and Phil.
Yes, are like misfit,
They kind of are.
Totally. And so it was like, Prefontaine, you could go down the whole lineage, that's what makes them best. And so I thought maybe like they would accept somebody like me. And while my story was not front and center when I applied for the job, I didn't tell my story publicly until I was 5 years into that 10-year career. And I'll leave you with this because you were saying something about it. Why do I keep it? Because what I realized was that people sort of admire us and our strengths, but they connect with us through our struggles.
Yeah.
And so like, you didn't get choked up when I was talking about all these cool athletes that I worked with. It's kind of like, oh, that's cool. And like, that's fun to talk about, but it's like, whatever. But when we connect on like a deeper level is through our faults and our struggles and what we've been through. And so when I took this risk, I thought I was maybe committing career suicide. But again, I had done the work to say, what do I believe I was put here for? It was to try to help people and steward people and help people live a better way of life. And a lot of that was in recovery. If I could do this film, I got approached by this organization, I Am Second. If I could do this film publicly and save at least one person, then am I going to sacrifice that for like some cool job, Right. And so, but these were false choices that I was putting in front of myself. I did the film, Nike supported it, and I connected with my teammates on a whole nother level. Yeah. And people started coming to me and telling me all kinds of things that they had been through and that they appreciated. And I was celebrated at Nike, and they promoted me, and they put me on stages, and they, did all kinds of cool stuff. And so that was, my senses early were affirmed later by when I shared that story. And so a lot of what I'm doing with these athletes is then just trying to give them my story and my experience and trying to encourage them in that, hey, I know everybody celebrates you and your strength, but you've also probably been through some struggles. I know you have. And if we can find the right way to share that struggle through your story, you will connect with people on a much deeper level than whatever you can do on the volleyball court or basketball court or football field.
Yeah. And it's fun when it becomes less scary to be who you really are. It's a
so
much nicer way to go through life.
So much easier.
It just is.
Oh my gosh.
When you publicly speak, do you get scared, or have you worked it out?
I've worked it out. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a gift to you, because that a lot of people, they don't like that. So
I do know. I know. I probably should be more scared of some things like heroin and other drugs in my past. But,
no problem.
but I don't know. It's probably my need for attention or something. I've used it in my favor now, but I really enjoy it, and I enjoy kind of sparking something in people and trying to move them in a positive way. So I've really enjoyed it since I was young.
Tristan, Cameron, if you have a question or anything left over that I missed, didn't cover.
I'd love to hear just a little bit about your transition from working at Nike to starting your own company.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit. I think that's quite the drastic change.
Totally. Yeah.
It's called stuck at home with your children insanity. No, so you, Tristan just asked if you have this great career, deep roots, giant company. We know Nike's not going anywhere, and you decide, I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's such a safe bet.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So what was had it been a long time coming, or what happened?
No, halfway through, I did get a real itch to leave and start my own company. I started learning all these things, and that's what I do. Like, it's a lot of the content I do, a lot of the resources I put on my site are just like, I had no idea all this stuff existed. Like, I didn't know things that I didn't know what a marketing agency was. I didn't know what a creative agency was. I didn't know there were people like the very talented people here filming this studio. Like, I didn't know all that stuff existed. Before I would have seen, I don't know. And so I feel like it's a little bit of my duty to kind of go, like, did y'all know there's all these opportunities to do this stuff? Like, I just kind of linearly put my sights on Nike as this corporation and was just like looking at that job board. And I didn't realize that there were all these other things surrounding it that I could eventually got into that would then help me get in there much better. And so, anyway, it was a great career. It was awesome. The first time I almost left was like, I wanted to help teach college I could see the wave of how powerful creative and social was going to be for college teams. And I wanted to go teach them how to fish or fish for them. They've eventually brought all that stuff in-house. Sometimes I don't think they invest enough in it still, even though it's the number one place that their brand shows up. And so I'm pretty passionate about that stuff. And when I go visit these college campuses, I usually have fun chatting with the creative team or whatnot. And so that was the first time. I always felt like I was entrepreneurial. I had this spirit in me, and people would ask me about the cool stuff at Nike. And they would say, what do you think has helped you succeed? And I was like, I know this sounds weird in like a multi-global national corporation, but it's because I'm entrepreneurial. And I do love I saw you had a Shoe Dog there. It is a company that, even though there's a lot of bureaucracy and it's a corporation like everything, it does welcome in the right places an entrepreneurial spirit. It still has that. And so that was welcomed in me and stewarded me in a lot of my roles. And so, but you have kids, things change. My wife and I, we had 4 miscarriages trying to have our first kid. And then we got pregnant, and she was 5 months pregnant. I got the job offer to go to Beaverton. I'd been with Nike down in Texas in our home. And so we moved. We had just bought a house 6 weeks prior. So we sold a house, bought a house, moved across country, had a baby, and I started a new job, like all in, this few months. And it was great for a while. And then we had our daughter, who's beautiful and such a gift. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like my job went from flying all over the country, flying over the world sometimes, Paris, Madrid, London, working with all these cool athletes, going to games and being on the sidelines and doing all this stuff. And again, that high sensation seeking, like I was just like, it was moving and grooving. And I didn't love working on campus as much because I was in a lot of conference rooms and meetings. And so that creativity would get, but you had enough breath of the fresh air where you go down to LA, go to New York and all this stuff. And so we just like sat at home. Like, he worked from home for 2 years straight.
With little kids.
2 little kids. I mean, 18 months old, 3 years old.
That's like almost the worst ages possible.
Literally.
Because a new baby would be fine. They sleep a lot.
Yes, totally. 1 baby, maybe even 2 babies. Give me 2 babies, but like 2 toddlers. It was a relatively small house. So suddenly, and I was looking back at the pictures. I'm speaking to a company tomorrow who's like they do baby strollers and all this stuff. So, and I was thinking back about how hard that was. And anyway, it just got really, really hard. And I'm not afraid to run, or I'm not afraid to go into hard things, but I just started to have to ask myself is this where my wife is served best? I love her, and my job is to serve her well. And my job is to serve my children well. And if we are like sitting in the cold, rainy, wet Portland, Oregon for like 7 months out of the year with these two toddlers, and Portland was like shut down, y'all. It was none of this Texas stuff. I don't know what California. I think California was like
no. They're scared here.
Yeah, in Texas it was like go home for 2 weeks and then go back to life. Portland was like for 2 years. They literally didn't.
How about when you flew? Wasn't it the best? Like you fly into Texas and somehow COVID doesn't. I love that contrast.
Exist.
It's amazing. You get in Oregon, they're like triple mask. So did you do a
culture shock?
Did you do a business plan, or did you have a plan before you said, "Hey, I'm shutting it down
fair.
at Nike"? Or
two things. One, again, I met so many amazing people there. One of my really good friends, guy mentored me through personal finance. So I got really into personal finance a few years before, and so I had been investing, I had been saving, I've been doing all this stuff, even on like. Even when my wife stopped working and we were making it on mine, like I'm so grateful for that because I could not have made the jump into entrepreneurship. It was so much more expensive than I thought it was going to be. Oh, yeah. So much more. I was like, I'm a single consultant. Like I need a MacBook and like a camera and an LLC and I'll be good. And I was like, oh my God, like I spent so much money the first year, but
you invested in yourself.
I did invest in myself, indeed. And so I just had to kind of, again, call my own bluff and go, if I believe that my first role is, if I believe I'm entrepreneurial, if I believe that my wife and my children are not set up for success, all of our family lives in Dallas, Texas. When I say all, like all of our family and friends live in Dallas, Texas. I wish that they lived somewhere else. I do not want to live in Dallas, Texas, but my life is not about me at this stage, I think eventually we'll make it to the West Coast or something, but and I also want to be clear, I don't want to sound like a martyr here. I was not happy in Portland, Oregon when it rained for 7 months out of the year. The cruel irony of Nike, I will just say this, is like in a corporation, I think they stewarded my talent. They rewarded my creativity. I kept getting promoted for my creativity. And the higher I went, the less creative I got to be.
Yeah.
My creativity was being used on like, how do I not let this corporate machine chew up and spit out really talented kind souls,
designers, and such,
and like the team of marketing, they're young and whatever, and it's this dog eat dog, anyway. And so, or I just want, what I realized is like Nike's probably better than 98% of corporations. I was fundamentally at odds. I don't think human beings can function and thrive as we are intended in a corporate setting, but, And so entrepreneurship has been really good for me. So one, I was really passionate about NIL. I'm obsessed with this concept of looking at like, what is a perceived disadvantage that I perceive to have and how do I turn it into an advantage? So it's like, I need to live in Dallas, Texas. That was very clear. But there's no sexy, like the world that I was in, like sexy marketing doesn't exist in Dallas. You either in Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or New York. Not even Chicago as much anymore. Like you could be in Chicago, but so there's really like 5 cities you could live in the United States and do like stay in my genre. And so I was like, okay, NIL is coming. I'm super passionate about it. If you looked at like my Twitter feed from years ago, it was just basically blasting amateurism and being very frustrated with it. I don't know why, but it was this passion that I had. And so I was like, I'm within a 3-hour drive of 15 universities who are obsessed with sports. I think this could be an opportunity. And so it was a lot harder than I thought. I thought, look, I've got this crazy story I've just rattled off to you for the last hour and a half. I'm like, I'm going to tell them that. They'll hire me like next month. It'll be great. I'll be booked up. And all these people were like, oh yeah, you'll be booked up. You're going to be doing great. But it took a lot longer than I thought. So like I saw you, I think in November, and it was this amazing week with Florida State. I got connected with Florida State in July of 2022. Oh. And it took over a year of like this relationship with Sarah Petronio, this amazing human. We had an amazing touch base. She was one of the good people who were like serving student athletes.
So that's like more than 14 or 16 months.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like while keynote speaking, you can get good rates and all that. It just took so much longer to steward those relationships than I thought. And yeah, there are all kinds of other challenges in the business. But so I got scrappy, but I had this moment, and James Clear does the Atomic Habits. I abhor email. I hate email. I do not want I never want an email. People are like, join our email. I'm like, I would literally rather stab myself in the eyeball than sign up for another email. But and now I've asked people to join my newsletter. But he had this one and was like, how would you counsel your best friend if they were facing your biggest problem? And when I was really worried, meditating in Portland, Oregon, rainy Portland, Oregon, my kids climbing all over me, and I was like shaking to my core, thinking about, I'm about to leave this dream job. Like, are you freaking crazy, dude? Like, because I knew when we moved out of Portland, Oregon, like, I'm leaving Nike, and I don't think they're gonna change their remote possibility. Like, and it might be 3 months I get to stay, it might be 6 months, it might be 18 months. It ended up being like, I think 15 or 18, but and I had this like out of body experience where I sort of looked at myself. And it would be like, after I just rattled off all this to you, I would be like, dude, do you think that like Nike's the mountaintop? You're going to be freaking fine. Like, you are going to figure it out. You are going to overcome. Like, you've been through all these hard things. You've hustled, you've done all these things. You're going to be fine. And so I had to kind of give myself that pep talk to like actually do it. But I'm really glad I did.
Yeah.
It's been really hard, but I'm so much happier.
Well, it seems like you're finding a stride, too.
Yes,
Because we can't have our legs underneath us until we know what the speed of the game is of what we're doing. I mean,
that's right.
There's just no way.
That's right.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, in wrapping up, I will say that if I oversimplified it, it is that true reminder that, this is our one true life, each of us. And when we can get in touch with who we are, what we're good at, what we can contribute, whether you're an athlete or you're looking to start a business on your own or take on an adventure or career that a lot of people will be like, well, that's really hard, or why do you think you can do that? I think that strong reminder of if we do it as our authentic or our real selves, it finds its way. And it is scary.
Yeah.
And it's even scary though when we follow the rules. I think when we hit a clock, there's elements of that are either a slow death or nothing's for sure or guaranteed anyway. So the idea of taking chances, and I really appreciate you sharing your story a lot. You can see why I didn't want to start with that.
Oh, no. I see. Yeah, totally.
Because it makes talking about marketing. So, okay, that's great about your addiction. And let's talk about marketing. It's like, okay, weird.
Totally.
Because it's sort of like in the grand scheme of things, what's more important?
What TikTok strategies should these athletes
Green
use?
screen is
now
good.
That we've moved beyond the death-defying addiction.
Can you
Let's
remind
talk about trending
people?
audio.
No, seriously. Should they do bullet points? And how'd you know to point here and then point there? Can you just remind people of all the ways to reach you? And I do feel like you offer that if people write you a note that you'll respond.
Sometimes I do. I try to actually respond to almost everything I get.
Yeah.
Most of my website, which is jordanrogers.xyz, jordanrogers.xyz, it has links to all my social. I'm most active on Instagram, which is @jordanrogers, jordanrogers. Yeah. And that's where I'm most active. So I try to respond to everything. It's getting harder.
Okay, so good news for you is I hear on the horizon that there will be probably in the next year sort of almost like a chat GPT assistant that can kind of funnel through your emails and help you with that. So I'll be learning that myself. I just want to let you know.
I've got a great DM automation system that's working for me right now over the last couple of weeks. So
what do you mean?
It's incredible. Basically, you see these people that say comment X and I'll send you something. So it's DM automation. So I've been utilizing it over the last couple of weeks, and I'll be like, comment sports, and I'll send you this PDF that I just made, and it'll collect an email. I'm doing like a trade-off a lot of times for an email to try to build a newsletter business eventually to share. I've realized because while I hate email, I've learned that a lot of people don't necessarily want to watch TikTok videos. They would like my wisdom in another form. And so, the DM automation is pretty cool. And then most of my site is built around trying to, a lot of people want to pick my brain or talk to me for 15 or 30 minutes about getting a career or whatever. And I'm like, I have a whole page I literally bought how to get a job at Nike.com. You can go to howtogetajob@nike.com, and it's my website, and it has all these free resources. It's got a paid workshop you can take if you want like the deepest, but it's all my podcast appearances where I talk about my career. It's my life story. It's tips and tricks. And then, speaking inquiries are on there, and consulting inquiries, which I have less and less time for, but I try to arm everybody where you don't need my time to answer all those questions. So maybe AI will help us with that in the future.
I think it's right around the corner. You have no idea.
I've got some idea, but we'll see. I talk enough. I don't know if I need an AI chatbot to talk anymore, but it might. It might help. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you want to learn more, there is a ton of valuable information on my website. All you have to do is go to GabrielleReece.com or head to the episode show notes to find a full breakdown with helpful links to studies, research, books, podcasts, and so much more. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and send them to @GabbyReece on Instagram. And if you feel inspired, please subscribe. I'll see you next week.